77 kilometres to go. It's a tad blustery, but other than that, it's just rolling along. It's the sort of day when in the commentary box you can lose the will to live, if you're not careful. But it's all part of the game. Sean very pointedly said, he said, oh, we're over halfway now. We've only 11 down, 10 to go. It's all downhill from here. But it's very much not all downhill from here, is it, Sean, now, really? Only a couple more stages available for sprinters to really try. And really, tomorrow, I don't think it's going to be one of them because it's real up and down, up and down, up and down tomorrow. But really, we're coming to the end of this sort of phase of racing.
Yes, and there is very little days left for the sprinters because the ones which are up and down as well, there's so many riders now a long ways down in general classification. From here on, the breaks should be able to go all the way to the finish on some of those days. So the number of opportunities for the sprinters is very tiny after today. And now the race really starts for the big favourites. We're coming into the final week and final 8 days where this race is going to get very difficult. And we talked about it, I suppose, at the start of this Giro. It's not as difficult as last year, as we can see. One of the riders just riding.
Daniele Rigi. It's the Rigi fan club are out.
Yes.
In this area.
Saying hello to his training buddies.
Absolutely, yeah.
And yes, even Basso, actually, I was reading there, he said, I'm hearing a lot of talk, I'm reading a lot about this race, Giro this year being much easier one than last year. And he said, I'm not agreeing with that. He said the racing has been very nervous, he said, and I think because of that, the difficulty of the final week of this Giro, he said some of the big favours, I think fatigue, there will be big surprises.
I think there will, actually. He did very well yesterday, actually, Ivan Basso. Surprisingly good at his positioning, kept himself right up towards the front on a finish that perhaps we might not have counted him as being one of the better ones up at the front, but he did very well. For me, as this race goes on, Sean, of course we've not got to the really big mountains yet, but he looks increasingly good. Yes,
he's looking real good, and he hasn't been racing a lot this year. Some crashes going out of races haven't been in good form, and that is so important, that the good form is coming at the right time, and it looks to be the case that he's staying very much at the front. The team is doing an excellent job for him. Every day, flat stages like yesterday with an uphill finish, he's just looked after by a minimum of 4 or 5 riders to keep him in the front of the bunch and keep him out of danger. But the big question is he good enough in the big mountains? We have a lot of the big favourites all very close together, all there in the general classification, but we have to get a big mountain stage to really get a test to see who is the better of the big favourites and who is going to struggle a bit, because at the moment we haven't had anything of a real test for these men who are going to fight it out for the overall victory in this Giro.
Yeah, you need one bad day, and because the general classification is so close, Sean, everybody's going to be fighting for. I suppose the question is, because everybody is so close, do they all mark each other for the final week in the mountains? Do they all look at each other and not do as much attacking riding as we suspect that it might happen, or do they go on the attack and try and blast each other out and make some big gaps happen? But it could go either way. It could be that it ends up being a reasonably quiet last week and they leave it up for maybe 1 or 2 mountains.
Well, I think when you look at the general classification, the big favourites that we talked about are all in there, very much in contention. There's some of the other ones who it says, well, he could do a good ride in this Giro, he could be on the podium. And when you mention those riders, you can Rigoberto Urán, you can look at Pozzovivo, for example, and a number of other ones who are very close in the general classification. And take a Pozzovivo to make a point of it. He could be a long ways down. He could be 5 or 6 minutes down today in the general classification. So when we get into big mountain stages, you could allow him to attack and take a minute in some of the mountain top finishes. But the position he's in now, he's a danger man. You can't allow him to take very much because he's only 112 down in the general classification. So that's going to make the racing very aggressive in the mountain stages, and especially the mountain top finishes. They'll not be able to hang around if they like a Pozzovivo attack 8-10 kilometres from a mountain top finish. There are going to be riders who have to react, and that is going to make the racing, I think, more difficult and very aggressive amongst the big favourites.
So if you do have a rider like Pozzovivo suddenly take advantage of something steep and sharp and go away with 10 kilometres or so to go, what are they then going to do? There's a nice shot of the battery pack on a Di2 electronically equipped Sky machine being ridden by Jeremy Hunt, as we were talking about it a little earlier. As if on command, they bring the shot up. What do you do if he gets away and none of the others really react? Sean, do they all band together and put him under pressure where he really can suffer on the descents? Or if the weather's bad, do they attack him hard as a group, or do individuals attack? Because it used to be that you got not necessarily combines, but you've got people who would work together and try and kill off other riders, but it doesn't seem to be the case so much now.
Well, for the moment, Pozzovivo, he's in a real good position, and will we get a day where they will try something if the weather conditions change and we get a wet descent? Will there be teams that will try and do something? Because I think he is becoming a concern for the big favourites and the bigger teams, because he's really in a dangerous position at the moment, and if that continues on, weather holds well for this Giro right through, and he gets the big mountain stages in the positions at the moment. He is a real danger man, because he can climb so fast. We see him the other day when he went in the attack on the steep section, and it was only 2 kilometres, and it was going very fast because Liquid Gas were setting a real strong pace, and they definitely would prefer him to be at 5, 6 minutes, 8 minutes at the moment, but that hasn't happened in the earlier part of this race, and he is going to be a problem if it continues the way it is in general classification at the moment. When we get to the big mountain stages, the mountain top finishes, he's going to cause a lot of problems.
There's a lot of talk about Pozzovivo, about the fact that he's done wonderfully well at Giro del Trentino, which one has to say was a race pretty much suited to his characteristics. But suddenly he's become super good here in the Giro, bringing that form to the Giro. And there's lots of surprise at his ability to ride at this level. So he's 29 years of age now, is Domenico Pozzovivo. And Pozzovivo has ridden with Penaria and ridden for quite a while, often just in the Giro d'Italia and the domestic races. We've not seen him outside. He tried last year, Sean, but got completely battered by the wind. When we were in Northern Europe, he just didn't like it at all. He's clearly matured as a rider somewhat, but he's in very exalted company here, and the Italian press and the French press all sort of sucking in their breath, going, hang on a minute, here's a new contender somehow.
Yes, well, I suppose circumstances of this race, it has been relatively, the weather has been real good, conditions hasn't been difficult for racing. We haven't got the wet, we haven't got the windy conditions, and that's what Pozzovivo do not like. If you get windy conditions, and up in Denmark the first number of days, if it had been blowing a strong wind up there, well then he would have been in difficulty, and he would have been one of the favourites who would have lost quite a lot of time. Not the case at the moment, and into stage 11 here we are. It's looking good for him, and I think Colnago will be they will be just praying there that the weather conditions hold right, that we don't get some wet day when we have some mountain stages or medium mountain stages where he doesn't like the descents at all. And if he can continue on and get into the real difficult stages where he is at this moment in general classification, then he is in a perfect position to do a great result in this Giro.
It was good to see a couple of names we don't normally see. Yesterday, Bartosz Hojaszki from Team Netap, the Polish rider. I tell you what, he did a really good ride in the Tour of Romandy and was clearly up there. Tom Schlachter, who we've said before, I think he's Butcher, by the way, Schlachter, was the only time we've really seen him in the Giro d'Italia is when he got kiboshed on the Strada Bianchi stage a couple of years ago, where he, in that dreadful weather, he got caught up in it, I think, and got dragged down. But good to see some other names there. Uran and Henio, very positive looking for Sky now, Sean. You've got Henio, who can clearly climb, very young. Rigoberto Uran is maturing all the time. Both of them are still in the young Ryder classmen, and they're just behind Caruso. Very, very good yesterday. Very strong.
Yes, also impressive in that sort of a finish, and they're very much up there in the general classification. 111, I think, and Heino was at 127. So again, there are two other riders. How will they fare out at the big mountain stages? That is the question. I suppose Rigoberto Uran, we know he's a real good climber. Heino, will he be able to, to last out the final week? Will he have difficulty with that? That is the big question mark. And but still very much up there. And for Sky, it's a great position with there are two men capable of doing the general classification. Lost nothing time-wise against the other big favourites, really. So it's also going to be interesting to see what they can do. How will they defend in the big mountain stages?
We started in Perugia area this morning, and now we are into Chianti. And if the great David Duffield were sitting here, he'd give you a rundown for the next 25 minutes of all the decent Chiantis that you should be drinking. Actually, Italian wine's had a massive resurgence in the last sort of 10 years or so. They've sort of let things slip, really. Viticulture in Italy just went down a notch, really, and they came under pressure from the New World and from Australia. But they've really upped their game here. We saw Dario Cioni a little earlier doing his piece with Daniel Lloyd. Everybody was saying, gosh, he looks like he's carrying a few kilos. Cioni, there's a lot of people saying that. He has retired, folks. He's allowed to carry a few more kilos. He works as a communications officer for Team Sky now, hence he's got the Team Sky kit on. But he's got his own Chianti.
And he lives in Italy.
Exactly. But it happens.
It's
easy.
Normal. It's so easy to put on a couple of pounds in Italy, of course, with the buona pasta.
He probably has mum at home as well. Actually, he is Anglo-Italian, isn't he? He's got grandparents who live in Reading. Come from Reading. But yeah, he's got his own Chianti vineyards here. I was given a couple of bottles, actually, at the beginning of the year. Jolly nice it is, too.
They're starting to roll a bit better here, as we can see. 67k to go from 15 kilometres back up the road. They were really just rolling along, but here they're starting to push on. And advantage 153. It's so little that they were wondering exactly what to do. And I think there was a time when they were a bit of discussion up there between the 5 breakaway men. Will we continue on here, or what do we have to do? And talking with the director of Sportives, I suppose they said, well, just keep on going here. You're out in front, and just get the most out of the day now. Yeah.
Yes, they've got some sort of purposeful nature to them now. They are rolling through and off. One man at the front, and then another man takes over, and so on. Gives you a bit more of it's a very useful way of conserving a little bit of energy and keeping the speed reasonably high. 66.8 kilometres to go. It's been blustery, as we've said, but it's not been a bad day at all. Unlike, of course, when Dario and Daniel Lloyd were out doing their preview, where it looked as though it was raining a little bit. Daniel, by the way, is still racing. He did race with Garmin and Cervelo in the Pro Tour. He is still racing. He decided that when he didn't get a place at the end of last year, he would come back to the UK and didn't really want to race domestically much. He had been in the Pro Tour. He wanted to stay at that sort of level and say, you know, I've ridden that now. That's fantastic. But when IG Sigma came along, a great team, domestic team, he said, well, look, we've got really good plans for continuing with the team and making it something special, and we'd really appreciate your input and your experience within the Pro Tour. He took up a place there. So Daniel now riding with IG Sigma Sport, but also shares his time with us here in the commentary boxes as well. He and Carlton Kirby working together at the moment. Jolly good news too, one has to say. Yeah, they are rolling around pretty well together now. Through goes Boaro then, followed by Kaysen. 25, even though they're rolling around pretty well together now, our breakaway men, they're never going to get much further than this. It's just one of those days. To Hunt, though, has upped the pace a little bit on the front here for Sky. The breakaway men are sights from Euskaltel, 1 hour 29.32 behind. Michael Delage at 1:05. That's 1 hour and 5 minutes, by the way. Kiteson at 1 hour 19. Boaro at 1 hour and 2 minutes. And the best placed man, and no threat whatsoever, Stefan De Nevel of Vacansoleil at 41 minutes and 56 seconds. A bit of urgency here amongst the peloton. They're stretching them out a little bit. Maybe they feel it's the sort of area they want to be stretched out in and not bunched up where there could be any problems. 1:13 is the gap. We're finishing today, having run out of a CC into Montecatini Terme, and Sean, it's pretty much a sprinter's finish, and always has been a sprinter's finish, this one.
Yes, well, there's quite a few sprinters. Cipollini there in 2003, or 2003, yes, and then we have Merckx, of course, winning, and Van Steenberg and Knudsen, so a lot of finishes here. 13 times we have had a finish here, so it's one of the cities which has been a finish of a stage in the Giro. I think one of the most cities receiving a stage end.
Yeah, since 2003, and before that was 81 for Knudsen, the Norwegian rider. Quite a big gap, but we have been here a lot of times over the years. Interestingly, Cipollini, of course, and Merckx, both riders who have had bike brands. There's one other winner here from a sprint who has a bike brand, had a bike brand. If you can find that out, if you know who it is, just tweet at Spokesmen as they go through the feed zone. Somebody just asked on Twitter, is there really a place called Chianti Shire? I don't know. I just known it as Chianti. That would be great, wouldn't it? You could do everything with a Shire on the end and anglicise it. Brilliant. Yeah, that would be fantastic. The Tour de France could finish in Paris Shire. Marvellous. Now, this is coming down pretty quick here. I think, well, now we know the reason why they wanted to be strung out a bit. So they're going through the feed zone. They are further and further into the road each time. That's not a good idea, sir. You may be a fan, but please don't keep running out through the road. We've had all sorts of problems in feed zones over the last few years. Sean, they seem to be getting more and more hectic.
Yes, in some races they're getting very hectic, and
not so bad here.
Not too bad here. In the classic race especially, I think there have been a few problems, and it is a bit of a concern. And when the riders arrive in the feed zone, it's always a danger time because there's a lot of movement and riders trying to move across maybe too much to the left-hand side as they come into the feed station. They see the Monsieur, and they want to cut across very quickly. So it gets very dangerous. And if you stretch it out a bit and have the bunch as we see there, Jeremy Hunt was pushing it on. It's pulled out a bit. It makes it that bit safer, but still, it's always a little bit of a concern for the riders that there could be problems going through the feed zone.
How much practice is it to take to do this, Sean? Now your domestiques have picked up the musette from the side of the road, from the soigneurs who've been standing at the side of the road. They've grabbed it, it's full of food, it's full of bidons, and maybe 2 or 3 riders within the team have got them, and they've got to distribute it, and they've got to do it on the move. They've got to move backwards and forwards and up and down, and then get rid of the musette afterwards. How much practice does it take?
Well, that's the thing, that they practice so much right from the age when they go into events where there is a feed station. And of course in the shorter events you don't have a feed station, there's no need for it, but when you start racing under 23 level, then you have feed zones in a lot of the races you do, and just practice makes perfect, I suppose. It all depends how you arrive into a feed station. If you arrive at 55-60 per hour, that's when it's real dangerous, because riders, they grab the bag, but sometimes they come unattached. The string from the bag, it just breaks off, and there's food and drinking bottles, bidons all over the road. If you roll through at a pace of 30 kilometers per hour, 25 kilometers per hour, then it's much easier and it's more casual. So it's safer when you go through a bit slower, but still there's always a risk that somebody get their musette tangled in a wheel, or somebody touches somebody at the rear wheel, and down they go. So it's always a little bit concerning no matter what way you arrive into the feed zone.
How do you start practicing it though? Because obviously at junior levels the races are too short to need them. At what point in your career does somebody hand you a musette from the side of the road for the first time?
Well, you can practice any time. You can start practicing at junior level.
but you don't.
If your club or your coach or your parents want to do that, you can do it very easily. You can ride along and just grab the bag as you go along, or on your own. It gets more difficult, of course, when you have 190 or 180 riders going along, and you're all very much packed together there. So it makes it much more difficult, much more dangerous, and it's just all about the rate you arrive into the feed zone, and that determines what lies ahead. If there's a climb a number of kilometres from the feed zone, well then it gets very nervous. Or if there's a turn in direction and there's a possibility there's going to be a wind conditions, echelons possibly, well then it gets very nervous as you go through the feed zone. But normally in a big tour, in general, most of the time it goes through the feed zone pretty normal.
55 seconds only the gap. Nice to see some proper food in the musettes. It seems to have been the situation that there was a few years ago when a whole raft of energy products were being developed and came out from all sorts of different companies, and all very good at what they did, but they all had deals with various teams, and you get a musette handed out and it would just literally be full of energy bars and gels and this and that was all quotes energy food from supplement and nutritional suppliers. And they found the happy balance now, I think, Sean. They've got a mixture of real food, the things that are made up, that you need that for comfort as well. You need something that just feels right, and the energy products and the nutritional supplement products nutritional products that have been brought to us by various companies over the years. They seem to have swung it back to a balance between the two, which I think is a good thing.
Yes, it is a good thing, and I think it has been a bit of it always there, that whether they go for a bit of normal food, as we see there. The Saxo Bank rider was having something looked like a bread roll with something. They put sometimes a bit of cheese in it, a bit of ham, and it just to change the taste a bit, I think, as well. And when you're riding along at an easier pace, you can eat it with a bit of comfort. When you get into the race where it's really fast in the final, that's when you use the energy bars, the energy gels. And during the stage where it's very aggressive racing, if there's a lot of climbing, well then the opportunity is not as great to eat something a bit more normal. But I think the normal pieces were always in the feed musette going back over many years. But when you go back 25 plus years ago, it was more of the normal bread rolls and a piece of banana, all of that, where now it's been taken over by these energy gels, energy bars. The 80% of what will be in the bag will be of that content.
Seen some bananas out today and bits and pieces. Somebody having a bit of a tart earlier yesterday. Domenico Pozzovivo just hanging around at the back. It's safe to do so for him at the moment, it would appear. Nothing much going on after the feed zone, just rolling along. The pace is up a little bit. Matthew Goss now also at the back here in the red jersey there, the points leader in this year's Giro d'Italia. No riders around him. Surprised he hasn't got one person with him, but often, of course, the sprinters will just, in this sort of situation, Sean, will just wait at the back, get towed along, keep as much energy as they possibly can, ready for the final assault.
Yes, and I think, first of all, the calculation will have been made with the team that we're going to go the same direction all the way to the finish, and you can afford to do that, be back there on your own. You know the wind, the way it's blowing, so you can afford to do that. And I think Pozzovivo as well, he certainly does not like to be up in the front, where there's always a little bit of movement in the top 20, 30 riders, positioning and that, and he doesn't like that. And if you can sit down in the rear, it's a bit more relaxing, and he, I think, prefers that for the moment. But it's always a little bit of a risk, because if something, for some reason, the tactic, a team takes up a tactic which would not be the one you would be expecting, you're open a bit. But you have to make the calculation as well, what way the weather conditions is, what way the wind is blowing, the direction you're going to the finish, if you're going to change in that, and you can do it, without having too much to worry about it, if you look at all those aspects of the stage.
Agnoli handing out bidon. Don't worry about the ones being thrown at the side of the road. Either the spectators will have them, or there's a sort of sweep up that goes along. I think we've managed to get an interview with Roberto Damiani. He's the Lamprey team manager, by the way. The first thing we hope it's not going to be like yesterday, which was very dangerous in the final bit. Yesterday in the final kilometres we saw a sprint preparation, but an uphill finish. It was very dangerous. We must say we expected Cunego to be in better shape than he was. But hats off to Rodriguez, he was by far the best. Today is a stage for the sprinters slightly difficult on the Vico climb, 15k from the finish. It's a very long stage. It's quite predictable. There'll be an escape. They'll have to eat, drink, stay in the group to avoid problems, because tomorrow's stage is very demanding, and the final week is approaching, and we'll see. Well, I think he's got a point, Sean. Yesterday there was a real setup for people who whoops at the finish. It came in very, very fast indeed, but it was always going to be like that. It was very, very nervous yesterday, as so many of these stage finishes have been, because I think they've rolled a lot. They've been rolling along at a fairly benign pace for kilometre after kilometre, and then suddenly they realise the racing's upon them. In the last 30 kilometres, it just goes a bit haywire.
Yes, and it has been all stages like that. It has been very nervous. The flat stages, where it's normally, a bit more relaxed for the general classification men, but in the first week, everybody's afraid to lose some seconds, and for that reason, the teams really making things nervous between themselves, and just trying to position. And yesterday, of course, it would be normal that you'd have a very nervous final 25-30 kilometres because of that run in. A very technical, a very dangerous uphill finish, very narrow streets, and so easy to lose, 15, 20, 30 seconds. And we see Schleck, he lost, almost 30 seconds. So for that reason, it's always going to be very nervous in a final like we had yesterday.
Under a minute is our gap between the 5 breakaway men and the peloton. Seitz, Delarge, Kaysen, Boaro and Denifel are the riders in question, away from everybody else. And just winding their way along. It's been a very slow day today. 35 kilometers an hour as the average speed, just over. And that's fair enough. They've got some big days still to come, and the sprinters teams are just keeping that gap under control. 53 seconds, as we said, with just a little bit over 50 kilometers to go. We'll all come down to a sprint finish in the end. There is a hill at Vico, fourth category climb, just outside of Montecatini Terme. They go into Montecatini Terme and they come out on a loop, go over the climb at Vico, and then sprint down the other side back into Montecatini Terme again. There's 2 or 3 interesting bends towards the finish, and the run-in is certainly not straightforward, Sean, because on the way down from Vico it gets pretty twisting and turning.
Yes, it is another technical run-in, and it's a good thing that we have this climb because it will stretch the bunch out quite a lot. This 2k of a climb, if that wasn't thrown in there and was flat as we have on our screens at the moment, totally to the finish, well, it would make it pretty dangerous finish, considering when you look at the run in there, you know, at a kilometre to go it starts to go right and then it goes left, and then at 500 metres there's another sharp right, so it is quite a technical run in, but with the climb I think it will stretch things out and make it that bit safer. But again, it's another quite technical finish today.
Yeah, I'm not so sure it will stretch them too far out though, Sean, unless somebody really wants to push it hard. Because, to be fair, going up out of Montecatini Terme, the climb up to Vico is quite stiff, 8% or so, and a couple of hairpins in it. That's not too much of a problem. And again on the other side, 10 kilometres out, as you're going down from Vico, there's a couple of hairpins in there as well. But then there's time to regroup, unless somebody really gets away, or a small group gets away, Sean, because you've got about 9 kilometres or so to run back into Montecatini. And then that's where they hit those corners. If they're in those 9 kilometres, do you not see anybody being brought back if they even have a go?
Yes, I think we will see attacks, and somebody will try and go ahead on that climb, but it's a long ways to the finish, and difficult to see them being able to hold off. It would take a big push to hold off all the way to the finish, but again it will stretch the bunch out. If we had a total flat run on this circuit, which is about 14 kilometres, I think, it would be make it much more dangerous, because we know we'd have 100 riders all trying to be in the front, where now at least it will get stretched out quite a bit on the climb, and it will take a bit to get back in there, so the bunch will be more in a line going into the final number of kilometres. But again, we're still going to have 70-80 riders I think there at the finish. It doesn't seem to be difficult enough where it will split the group majorly.
That last right-hander, Sean, it's a bit like the reverse of the other day, isn't it? It's a sharp right-hander in towards the line again, only about 300 metres out. It doesn't matter how wide or tight the entry and exit is, they're all going to come barreling into there. The only saving grace is that there is another corner just about 600 metres out, which is a 90-degree left. Yes,
and it will all depend who's got teammates up there from the sprinters to keep the pace high, because if it's not well pulled on out front of the bunch, and there's a little bit of waiting and looking around to see where their sprinters are sitting in the group, well then it groups together, and that's when it gets real dangerous. So it's going to be important that there's some team can really push it on in the final 2-3 kilometres, certainly in the final 2 kilometres, and get into that final kilometre with the bunch really pulled out and make it that little bit safer. But again, the final corner is going to be a concern for everybody, because we've had the crash 2 days ago. A lot of riders are going to be thinking about that, and I think it's going to be another nervous final here today.
Under a minute. It's all rather steady at the moment. There's no reason to shut this down too early. If you do that, you run the risk of the front of the race being a little bit out of control. So just let the breakaway just hang out there until the time that you really, really need to bring it back. And that won't be for another 20 kilometres, something like that. Possibly a little bit further because we've got a 14 kilometre loop to finish. You know, we managed to catch up with Alan Piper today as well.
I think it all depends today to get a stage win on who will ride and who will control at the front. If it's a breakaway with riders who are a long way behind in the general classification, Katusha don't really need to control. But then for teams like Sky, Green Edge, Française des Jeux, Fini Varnesi, there's teams who have nothing already. They have a reason to ride because there's not so many flat stages left. So even if they don't have the best sprinter, they might want to go on a breakaway. But with some teams controlling, like Green Edge, Sky, Française des Jeux, it's going to be difficult to stay away, I think. But you never know. If it's a big enough group and they give them enough time, do Green Edge and Sky want to control for 250 kilometres? That's the big question.
Well, the answer to that is that they've partly done that. Green Edge haven't had a single man up there, but Sky have made a conscious effort to have Jeremy Hunt and Bernard Eisel up towards the front for most of the day. Another good reason why you don't want to sort of hammer things into the ground and bring the breakaway back. It's just too energy expending. But nice to see other teams coming towards the front now. NetApp have 3 men up towards the front on the right hand side of the way. You can see them now on the left hand side of your helicopter shot with mainly white, blue stripe down the side, pink right down the middle. That's NetApp, German team. Daniel Schorn is their sprinter. And the young Austrian actually did very well the other day, Schorn. He managed to negotiate that horrible bend that Pipo Pozzato brought Matt Goss down on and finished well up in the end. So Schorn looking as though he's capable of handling his bike in difficult situations and getting to the line reasonably well, and seems to be riding quite well in this Giro.
Yes, well, to be up there, you have to be riding quite well. It was a really hectic finish on that occasion as well, and I know the crash changed things a bit, but still, you know, you had to be in the top 15 or 20 riders at that point, which was only a couple of 100 metres from the finish, and it tells us that, you know, he's capable of staying up there, and if he gets the right opportunities, he gets in the right position and gets a good run at it, he could do real well in the stage and possibly, you know, take a victory. But it will depend who is in the final here today. This little hill will be important. After that, you know, if you have all the sprinters in there, well then it's hard to see, you know, who can beat the like of Cavendish and the other better sprinters.
Still coming down just a little bit, 49 seconds. They can calculate this so well. Sometimes you find that, as we saw yesterday with Katusha, they brought the breakaway back a little bit too early, and again today the breakaway was a bit too close, so they just let it drift out again. It's not even so much false hope amongst the breakaway riders when they see that. They just know that that's happening. The peloton is coming at them very quickly, and so they do have a little bit of time to play with. They know they're going to be let out a bit longer. Still nobody from Green Edge up towards the front, and there's Mark Cavendish in the middle in the rainbow bands, just homing in on him now. They're 181, and around him 3 riders protecting him, making sure that he stays out of trouble. The 3 in question, I think, were Peter Kennack, Juan Antonio Fletcher, and I think Thomas was the other one. These are our 5 breakaway men. Exactly 46 kilometres to go for the finish today at Montecatini Terme. We've been here many times on the Giro d'Italia, or should I say the Giro d'Italia has been here many times rather than we. It is a sprint finish. Assisi is where we started this morning. Over 250 kilometres to wheel along today, and the finish in Montecatini Termi. You can see there's a little loop around and then back as it is there. Lots of sprinters have won here. Cipollini, Merckx, of course, who quit sprinting. That is 1969, actually, the year that he was expelled from the Giro d'Italia under controversial circumstances. But Van Steenbergen has won here as well. One man who'll find it difficult to win here today, though, is Ivan Basso. But we did manage to catch up with this morning at his feelings about the stage itself. Very difficult, very long, molto lunga. On the face of it, you have to be as attentive and take the same care as the previous days. Do you have to stay quiet within the peloton? There's a difference between each stage. It's actually a very tricky, very complicated Giro, knowing that anything can happen at any moment. You always need to pay attention. You always need to be aware. Well, he's certainly been doing that, Sean, because his Liquigas team have hardly ever been off the front.
Well, they've been always hovering around the front and with Basso in tow, and we can understand why, because this race has been just so nervous. But when you look at today's stage, you know, there's been a lot of time there where you could sit back in 30th position in the earlier part of this stage. We can see what the average they've been doing. I think the last we got was about 35. So they have been, you know, going relatively easier today than they have been in all of this Giro. So you could sit back there in the group for a lot of kilometres, because the distance we have got today, 2:55, you know, there's been a lot of kilometres there where there's nothing happening, and the roads are pretty straightforward. We're going the same direction in the final 100 kilometres, I think, almost.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So you could afford to sit back in the group. With Basso, we know he doesn't like to be in the middle of the group. He likes the team to keep him up there in front, 2, 3, 4 rides in front of him. But some other rides, they can just, you know, go hide in the group on a stage like today, and you don't need a lot of team help, and you can relax for quite a long time, a number of hours in this stage. And it's probably the only one since the start of the race.
Yes, 250 or 230 kilometre training ride for Jeremy Hunt at the front there, Sean. I'm really sure he wasn't there at the very start of the day, but even so, he's done a lot of work by himself. He's got Robert Hunter, the South African champion for Garmin Barracuda, just behind him, and then Sebastian Rosler is the other man in the blue and black of Garmin. There is Ivan Basso in the Liquigas green, sitting in the middle of those three. And this man had spent a lot of time for some time in the blue jersey. Alfredo Balloni, the man you've just seen on your screen in the yellow of Farnese Vini. That's a good little ploy. Get out there, get the jersey while you can. 30 seconds is the gap now, and there's clear intent now to shut the gap, shut this down. And Hunt doing a very fine job, actually, because he's just there by himself, Sean, and nobody else is really giving him a hand. So 30 seconds he's got to close down, and they're quite happy, everybody, to let Sky do the work. We'll take a short break. Vinci, that's beautiful, is it not? We like that. How very lovely. It'd be nice to hang out there with a good glass of Chianti and do absolutely nothing else, wouldn't it? But sadly, we'll carry on talking about the Giro d'Italia. We've got Michele Scarponi coming up very shortly. This fortified belt out. 41.6 kilometres still to go. Actually, Scarponi yesterday, well, he had to fight to maintain his place. Came off a little better than Frank Schleck, but certainly didn't come off quite as well, I think, as Ivan Basso. Certainly didn't look quite as comfortable. Scarponi still coming home just a little bit behind Basso, but not too much. Let's see what he makes of today.
Oggi per i leader è una giornata veramente
Today,
lunga.
oggi.
perché
very long
sono
stage for the
260
leaders.
km quasi
It's almost 260
e non
kilometers,
passa
he says.
niente, non passerà niente, saranno oltre 6 ore di gara,
He
suppongo.
says it'll be boring, nothing will happen. You're not wrong, Michele. We will have to stay in the peloton.
Sempre un po' insidioso. Niente,
because
bisogna stare concentrati,
risks of
risparmiare il più possibile
rain and
perché
so forth.
domani è una tappa impegnativa e sabato e
could be,
domenica cominciano le montagne
twisty
vere,
and,
quindi una giornata da stare al
dangerous
coperto
in the
e
end.
stare vicino a qualche compagno simpatico per fare qualche
We'll
battuta,
have to stay
così passa
focused
meglio la
to save some
giornata.
energy for tomorrow. Because Sunday we start in the real mountains. Well, Michele, you've made my day. Nothing will happen. It'll be very long and boring. There you go.
Yes, how many nientes did he put in there? I think there was 3, maybe 4, so 4 no's, and he's pretty right at this stage. You know, it's a long stage, but nothing really happening until we get into this the final 14 kilometres, where we will definitely see. But before that, I think, as we're still 40 kilometres out, 25 possibly, we will see a lot of action. And you know, again, this positioning is going to be important here, because the little bit of a hill is going to make it that bit nervous as well. They're all going to be afraid that they will lose some time. If the peloton splits and you're not in the front end of it, you could find yourself losing a handful of seconds, and that's going to mean nervousness once again between all the big teams and the big favourites.
Yeah, well, everybody gets nervous in the last 25 kilometres or so, and this little loop of 14, it really comes down to racing in 14 kilometres today. Into Montecatini and then up and then out over the hill at Vico and then back down again. A little bit of twisting and turning, and then anybody who's got dropped will be able to chase back on. Our colleague from another broadcasting station, ITV4, back in the UK, Ned Bolting. Hello, Ned. He said, what's it like? What's the caravan like here? And he's writing on @spokesmen. It's pretty big, actually. It's same sort of format as the Tour. Goes in advance of the race, but it's a big one. And there's even more festive atmosphere. The French sort of tend to manufacture festive atmosphere, don't they? Whereas the Italians just have it. Yeah. Still, Jeremy Hunt is doing the work for Sky on the front there in the black, but he's got 2 men behind him now, Peter Kenyuk and then Juan Antonio Fletcher. And not far back from them will be Mark Cavendish. We're getting to that point where people are beginning to jostle at the front, Sean, to make sure that they've got a decent position running into the last 30 kilometres.
Yes, well, I think they're hanging about a lot of the teams, and with their favourites just there on the top end of the group, the top end of the peloton, in the top 30, 35, and they're just going to play the waiting game for the moment. And as we get closer to the climb, that's when we see a big amount of movement, and they all want to be in the top 15 riders going onto this climb, and that's when it gets real nervous. Sometimes, it can start 30, 35 kilometres out. Other times they can, wait until the final 20 kilometres. You just never know, and for that reason you have to be, pretty close to the front of the bunch. You can't afford to be too far off, because if one or two teams suddenly start really pushing it on, well, then you can find yourself a long ways off, and you have to make a big effort to make it to the front of the bunch again. And that's what they're doing here. We can see all the teams with their favourites for this overall classification. They're up there. The sprinters as well, they will move up a bit as well, although the sprinters their bike handling is so good, they can stay in this group 30 position, 40 position, and just hang around there for the moment. And as we get close to the climb, they will really move up as well to the top 15, 20 riders in the main bunch.
There's our 5 breakaway riders. Looking over the shoulders, Mikel Delage now. He had Manuel Barrao with him for company. One thing that must have been a bit demoralising for the breakaway today was early on in its stages, it got told to slow down and not to start increasing the gap. Why? Because the peloton got caught at a level crossing. And what happens there is that the breakaway gets over the level crossing, the bridge, the barriers come down, and they say to the breakaway, right, now you've got to just slow up and wait for them to establish the same gap as you had before, and then you can start going again. Must be terribly demoralising, Sean, doing that.
Well,
it's a racing incident as far as I'm concerned.
It would certainly really kill the little bit of morale you would have left when you can see that the break wasn't going to be allowed any advantage, and then the peloton gets a level crossing gets held up for a small amount of time and you have to slow up, well, that would definitely really kill off the little bit of hope you had of staying out there to the end of the stage.
I think it was in Roubaix or in Flanders a few years ago where Luis Pasamontes dived underneath a barrier and got going again and carried on and established a pretty big old gap. I think he was chucked off, if I remember rightly. And then Breccio. The breakaway is almost called. We'll get one of those shots from overhead in just a second, I'm sure, Sean, where we see the peloton bearing down upon our 5 men who've been in the breakaway today. A very long stage here in the Giro d'Italia, and Michele Scarponi was not wrong. Not the most interesting of stages to watch, or to commentate on, or probably or to ride, really. I mean, you can use it as a rest day, but as he said, the leaders will have to be attentive towards the end, but actually it's a very, very long, boring day for them. Sights of Euskaltel, Michael Delage or Francis de Jeux at the front there, TFDJ on the side. The Vacansoleil rider is Stefan Denifel. In the blue of Saxo Bank was Manuel Bearo, and Olivier Kaysen was a man from Lotto Belisol. In 22 seconds, they're just being dangled on a string at the moment, Sean. There's nothing else to do. Just leave him there for as long as possible. They must be wondering now, when are they going to get hunted down?
Well, I think we could see Michael Delange there looking about and saying to himself, when is this bunch going to catch us and get this over with? Because they've been just left hanging out there for kilometre after kilometre, and such a long stage as well, with 5 in the breakaway. It's so energy sapping, and when you do a break like this, it's going to take 2 days to recover. Unless you're in real good shape and you're feeling very, very strong, you have to keep it quiet the following day or the following 48 hours after being in such a long break here.
Still Jeremy Hunt riding on the front. Robert Hunt has had a very good Giro d'Italia in terms of strength, Sean. He's not been, that's the guy in the jersey there with the South African flag on it, the South African national champion, instantly recognisable as a jersey. But he's been very strong. He's been up there all the time, done a lot of good work. He did a lot of good work early for Tyler Farrow, but he's not been able to finish anything off in the sprint since then. He says he's not feeling quite on it, but he seems to be very strong.
Yes, he's been very impressive in this first week plus of this tour, and he's been up there a lot in the big sprints, and also the days when they've had to work for the team. He's been there very much to the fore, so he's in really good shape at the moment, and it'll be interesting to see today what his role will be in the final. Can he have a go maybe and try and do something for the stage victory?
Spread out across the road on the far left-hand side, Bernard Eisel is bringing Mark Cavendish, the world champion, up towards the front. He looks over and sees where the German Hunt is still okay. 35 kilometres to go. This is the head of the race with our breakaway. Sides, Kaysen, Denifel, Delage and Bayaro have been away for 180 kilometres. 20 seconds only is the gap between them. And all the big favourites teams and the sprinters teams coming up towards the front now. Green Edge are probably only team still to get some riders to the front. To be strung out in one long line. Alfredo Balloni is the last man in that group. And 16 seconds only for these 5 escape riders. There is the peloton. All the commissaires' cars, the officials' cars will have gone past our breakaway men, and they will know, they've known for some time, that the peloton is almost upon them. There's the neutral service car sponsored by Victoria tyre manufacturers. That's a good shot of seeing just how many people are in the cavalcade here. Here come our 5 men. Delage in the white, Guarda in the blue, Seitz in the orange. It's all going to be over very, very shortly, Sean. And still a fair way out, though, 32.3 kilometres. And are the big teams going to just start to take control now? Or is it the favourites teams who take control, or is it Sky and Orica Green that should take control?
Well, I think there will be a lot of teams on the front who exactly will take control, and that is the question, because they're all going to try and play the waiting game. As you said, there's 32 kilometres still to go, and almost on top of our 5 breakaways, just about over. It will only be another handful of seconds, I suppose, and it's going to be a nervous time, because the teams, all the big teams, will want to stay on the front and keep their men out in front end of the bunch, and this is going to be a bit of a nervous final. Probably more nervous than they would have hoped to be if the break could have stayed away till the final lap, which is 14 kilometres. But here, this is going to get more nervous, and we're going to have I think a pretty fast final here. Who exactly will take it up? They'll be all trying to wait and play the waiting game. So that is always a little bit more dangerous, because the speed maybe not as high as they would like it then, and it's all the time moving in the front of the bunch and trying to get position. It's going to be a bit of a dangerous final 30 kilometres.
Yeah, I'm surprised they've allowed this gap to come down so to such a short number of seconds. We're still 30 kilometres to go. As you say, Sean, they've still got to get into the finish at Monte Catini and then back out on this loop. And the 30k, they're not yet there yet. But as you say, it could be quite a difficult one to control now. Spare bike being required by Adriano Malori. Malori clearly having something that required, but certainly when the peloton's up to speed, Malori requires to get a new bike rather than a change of wheel or so forth. Here we go. At the front, Biaro, the best young rider of the first 3 or 4 days. Excellent time trialist, as we know, is really good in the early time trial. Trying as hard as he possibly can here. Had the best young riders jersey for a while. And is it Seitz who's tried to go with him? It is. Whereas Mikel Delage, Stefan Denifel and Olivier Kaysen have given up the chase now, given up the ghost. But still, that's a long way out. That's a desperate move by Boaro. But even so, I tell you what, Seitz is doing a good job to try and get with him. I think he's probably waiting for him a little bit, not too fast. Don't go off too fast. He's going to be better with 2 than 1, Sean.
Well, it's certainly better with two than 1. But again, it's just this, final burst from the men in the breakaway, and who is going to stay on the longest out in front. As we can see, I think the bunch has slowed up here, and it's only going to be for a short-lived period here, because as we get into inside the 30 kilometres to go, I think there will be a lot of movement here in the front of the bunch, and just the speeds will start picking up all the time. So for our leader on the road at the moment, Boraro, looks like the Escatel rider says is not going to make it across to him.
I'm not surprised that he's clearly not got across quick enough, and he's such a good time trialist, this young man. Gosh, he's going great guns after 230 kilometres. Surprised he's got that much left in his legs, Sean.
Yes, he's still riding very, very strong here, and if they had the opportunity where they got a big number of minutes, a big advantage, well then a rider like this, the way he's riding at the moment, he would be difficult to track down if you allow him to take 12 or 14 minutes in the earlier part of the stage, and into the last 30 kilometres, if you have 2.5 minutes advantage, 3 minutes advantage, he's the one who could hold off for a long time.
Well, he's putting in a big effort, his sides, but he's not going to make it back to Barra, that's for sure. Unless something drastic happens with the young Italian. There he is on the top of your screen. Just a handful of seconds separated the 5 breakaway men from the peloton. These two trying to push out as long as they possibly can. And he's been a pro for 3 years now, this young man. 2 of it with Saxo Bank. We would dearly love to have a win. Had some great wins back in 2010, but had nothing last year. I think just the step up to the next level takes a couple of years to get going. As Adriano Malori gets back into the rear of the peloton, and he'll tell you exactly the same thing. Malori, like Ulissi, has had to take a couple of years to get established at the very top level. Not easy to jump up from being a under 23 to a senior rider. Kilometers to go, and Emanuele Ferraro is going pretty quickly, one has to say. He's got 19 seconds on the chasing rider, Adrian Seitz. Which begs the question, how much has he still got on the peloton? Probably about 25-30 seconds, I would think, Sean, now?
Yes, it's probably up to the around the 30 seconds mark, and we can see, you know, the service car is in between, so it could be a bit over the 30 seconds, because he is riding real strong here, and you know, in the team they will be saying tonight, well, you know, pity the break never got a big advantage, and you know, there'll be a possibility of getting a stage win for Saxo Bank here, which would be, you know, hugely welcome to the team, because they haven't had a great beginning of Giro. The first week hasn't been, you know, really good for them, and a stage victory at this moment for any of the teams who haven't had success, it would be a great bonus before we go into the final real difficult week.
He really is a fantastically talented time trialist. Is this Serpa? No, Colombiano. Oh yes, it's the blue jersey. Couldn't quite see the blue in there for a minute. Colombiano has had a problem as well, the mountains classification leader. Flinging his bike backwards and forwards through the cars. 103. Wow. Well, that is a big gap he's opened up. And still on the front, Sky in the black with a blue stripe down the back. And Jeremy Hunt setting pace, but boy, he's a strong boy, isn't he? Boyaro, he's gone away, and 104 is the gap now, 25 kilometers to go. I'm sure they won't be panicking yet, but even so, that's a very strong move.
Well, it's a big effort, but how long will it live for? As we have still 25 kilometers to go. I think the bunch probably, you know, has slowed down a little bit, because they have seen now the break is broken up, and with one leader out alone, well, it's a bit easier as well. It's going to relax the guys in the front who are making the pace, but unfortunately, you know, 25 kilometers, a 25k time trial with a minute advantage over the bunch, it's never going to happen to hold on out there for a stage victory.
It's entertaining though. Yeah, but if anything, well, it's entertaining, but if anything, it sort of knocks the, as you say, knocks the peloton back a little bit. They won't be quite as nervous, quite as nervy at the moment. So nothing much will happen tremendously here. Adrian Seitz is trying to get across to Emanuele Boiaro, but I'm not sure we're not making much inroads to it. Best result that Boiaro's had this year was in Circuit de la Sarthe, which is a tough race, but slightly rolling, not particularly hilly. Second overall there, but he won the individual time trial at Angers. He really is a time trial specialist. Remember, he was 4th in the opening time trial here, so he's in excellent shape. .105, and it's sort of about evens now. It's not going out or coming back in, and as Sean said, it's going to be hard today for anybody to do anything. 4th in the opening time trial, Sean, so clearly in good form.
Yes, he is in good form, and he's a time trial specialist, and you can see the way he's riding here. He pulled out an advantage very quickly, and from the rest of the breakaway, we see the Hesjedal rider, the Spanish rider, says he's trying to get across, but it doesn't look like he's ever going to make it. When he did not make it immediately when Boraro went in the attack, well, it was always going to be difficult for him. Against the strong time trials like this, if you're not in the wheel real quickly, well then, always difficult.
Mi fa piacere che l'abbia detto.
Oh, it's
Purtroppo per me
Francesco Kiki of Omega Pharma Quick Step. I think he's saying he thinks he has a good chance today because he was named by Michele Scarponi there at the top, that he a possible winner for today.
Sto abbastanza bene.
The last 3 kilometers are going to be quite difficult for him.
La fortuna non mi ha ancora assistito e neanche tanto le gambe nella volta in cui ero davanti, però niente, guardiamo avanti, ci proviamo oggi, arriviamo vicini a casa.
Managed to do a good win today. The guys will bring me there, but it's important for us to get a win. They haven't had much luck so far, have they, Sean?
No, and he's the man they would be hoping for in the past week, where he would be able to maybe get a stage victory, but he hasn't had the look and doesn't seem to be really at his best in the first week, the first 10 days of this race.
105. Briaro is seriously motoring on. 22 kilometers to go. Seems to be a little bit slowing. Not too much, and it's bound to be like that, Sean, isn't it? He flipped the chart round on his stem now, thinking, well, I know what I'm doing, I'm just going to keep going.
Well, yes, there's not a lot to do here. You just give it your 100% and see how long he can hold on for. And with 22 kilometers to go, a minute of an advantage, he's riding real strong, considering they've been out there for so many kilometers today, the longest stage of the Giro.
There's Matt Goss at the back in the red points leaders jersey. Well, it's the last 3 kilometers that are going to be quite difficult. The hill is 3 kilometers, and that's going to cause us problems. We're going to get the team together to get us over that. I'm hoping to be up there first of all and get into the last bend. Well, I've got a good team for it.
Di chiudere su di loro. Sicuramente Green Edge cercherà di
fare la corsa dura per Green Edge obviously want to win the stage,
ma comunque penso che
adesso sta in condizione, ha una bella squadra e they've got a good team for that, but I've got a pretty good team as well. Oscar Gatto fighting his way back through the back of the cars. Gatto's a rider who could do something today, Sean. We've not seen much of him. He's very good in the early season classics, but we've not really seen him at the moment, and I'm surprised because in the Giro d'Italia he would have very much liked to have featured.
Yes, they certainly would love to feature, and for him in the Giro it would be real good, to get a good performance, and if he could get a stage victory, well then that would make his season, make it for the team in the Giro, as there are many others. And like, there's so many, the pretty good sprinters have been there on occasions during the first 10 days, and they will be all hoping today, first of all, get over this climb and get to the finish and have a go.
Brave effort by this young man, but it's not really going anywhere now. He went off great guns, but he has been out there for 180 odd kilometres. Massively long stage today, 255k. They've had a lot of very long stages in this year's Giro, Sean. 3-4 stages over 250 kilometres, or near 250 kilometres.
Yes, it is a very difficult Giro, considering the nervousness of the stages and the distance as well. And today's stage is a huge long one, and it's, although it has been going relatively slow, it's still, many hours in the saddle. It does take a lot of energy out of you.
41 seconds only. Saxo Bank gets some good airtime, and the young Italian Boiaro still ploughing on, but they are really speeding up behind. Gatto being brought back into the peloton here. Remember, we've got that 3-kilometre blast up the hill into Vico that's going to be important. And the last time we came here, it was a win for this man. Mario Cipollini back in 2003. He on the left-hand side, you can see. Now at the centre of your shot. And winning, unlike normally with the big train, wearing the World Championship jersey to boot. Beating Robbie McEwen on the left-hand side there. Alessandro Petacchi was behind in the race leader's jersey, but the World Champion winning on that occasion. Riding for Dominica Vacanza, if you remember them, at the zebra-striped kit. And 35 seconds only now. They're really in the final stages of tracking this man down now, hunting him down, because they're really flying along now. They've got to make sure they're ready for the final hill of the day. The lap is 14 kilometers in length, with a little hill in the middle. A couple of tricky corners towards the end. Here's Mark Cavendish.
It's a long stage, it's going to be very tiring, and there's a little climb at the end. I know this climb very well. It's close to my home in Italy, and yeah, it's not an easy one after 200. It's an easy one if we do it early on, but after 250 kilometers halfway through a tour, it's not going to be easy. I think it's going to be a spectacle at the finish, and hopefully we can make it a sprint.
Do you know that the last time that the Giro finished in Monte Caniterme, it was Cipollini who won? Does it give you an idea?
Yeah, well, I don't think, did it do Vico then? I don't know if it did the same hill, but yeah, it was close to his home as well there, so I'm excited for today. Hopefully there'll be a lot of fans from Quarata out, and we'll see how it goes.
Interestingly, could be two back-to-back wins for world champions, Sean. Not sure that happened very often.
No, it's not often. I think you'd have to go through the record books and to find a number of back-to-back victories like that. It would not be many. And as Cavendish said, a long stage, the climb. It's going to be an interesting one, and we could see maybe some surprises on this climb, because the long distance, it could just catch some of the better guys, the better sprinters out, and the ones that will get over as well, they will really dig in deep to get over, maybe suffer a bit, and they might pay for a bit of that in the sprint itself.
Pugas clearly wanted to control this once again, wanting to get some riders out the front to look after Ivan Basso, and of course they've got Caruso, the best young rider, lying second in that little train at the front there, in the white jersey of best young rider, but clearly he's playing his part today to keep control of the race. Basso and the team have been attentive. You do wonder how much they'll have left for the rest of the week, for the rest of the Giro. 23 seconds remain as a gap for this man, Manuel Boiaro. He was fourth, of course, in the first individual time trial here in the Giro d'Italia, and the Peloton, which is now hammering along. with Liquigas at the front. Sky get relieved of duties for just a little bit. Whoop, problems for Hesjedal. And quite sure which one of those three has got the problem, actually. It could be any of them, or all three of them. Cavendish in the rainbow bands. You saw Cipollini in rainbow bands. And Cavendish there, just a little bit back from the front, allowing Liquigas to do the work. And why not? 16.5 kilometers to go. The top of the climb at Vico comes with 11 kilometers still to go. And so it's beginning to get a bit nervy, and people are starting to get around the outside and mass people towards the front. Colnago again here, Sean. 1, 2, 3 riders at the front in the light blue. You can see them head on there, just on the inside of Valerio Agnoli of Liquigas, and they're really, it's only Agnoli and Basso from Liquigas who are at the front now, and Colnago have brought 3 men there. It's be an interesting finish for Colnago. They're incredibly active all the way through. They really want this one.
Yes, they have been very active, and they've been doing a good job for a team like Colnago. As we see, we're just under the 16 kilometers to go, and this climb, when you get to the 14 kilometer mark, it starts to just kick up a little bit, and you're onto the bottom slope of the climb. So it is an important moment. Position here is very important, because now we're so close to this climb, and it could be there could be a decisive move on this. You never know what teams are going to take it up, who's going to go on the attack.
Team Sky clearly showing that they had intent all day. They had Jeremy Hunt on the front, rolling along. Bernard Eisel did some work with him. He's now back right near the front. Coladan, I think, is the rider from Colnago, although I'm not entirely sure. I was looking at the 3 or 4 men from Sky. There's Eisel for Sky with the blue band across the front. And just behind him, Mark Cavendish. 9 seconds only. This is the run through towards the finish line here, Sean. We get a glimpse of exactly what it's going to be like on the run-in. It's not particularly wide, is it?
No, it's not majorly wide, as we can see here. But again, it all depends what way they arrive. If they have a real fast run, it will be stretched out, as we can see.
Already. Yep. Is that Hesjedal? Rasmussen, maybe. Yes, not a wide run-in at all here, and this is the run into the final. We saw the last corner. And the finish is very similar to the one we had back in 2003, Sean, into this with a wide sweeping left-hander. Now they are on the lap. And it's Movistar who are leading them over the line, with Sky also in this group, and everybody just holding station at the moment. They're not really attacking. They've got about a kilometre before they get to, or half a kilometre before they get to the climb. Through the streets of Montecatini Terme rides Manuele Boiaro. He's not got too much of an advantage now. It's a lovely little place. But the big question is now, will this hill break it up entirely, or will Team Sky and Orica Green Edge, if they have the legs, and they might just ride on the coattails of Sky, of course, keep it under control. It was Rasmussen who had a problem, and he's just going to have to make his own way at his own pace now. New front wheel required. All over for the brave Boiaro with 13.8 kilometers to go. The final man in our 5-man breakaway has been wrapped up. Movistar and 2 men from Green Edge now coming up to the front. One looks like Thomas Weitkus. And they certainly had another man coming up around the outside. Not forcing the pace, Sean, but it's good and steady.
Yes, keeping the pace high, but not giving it 100% here. And I suppose just to keep the stretch on the group. As we can see here, the first 20 riders, there's a good stretch on them now. They're starting to pull out, and Movistar probably wants us to do that, and that's the reason they just put that rider on the front there. And they have I suppose a chance here in this sprint, because with the riders they have, they could get up here in the final and go for a stage victory.
Not wanting to force the pace on too much at the moment, but Lotto Belisol have other ideas. And the rider putting in a dig here is Dennis Van Aert. As you can see, there's 2 or 3 little hairpins going up to the village of Vico. Will they get down the other side? There's really only this chance, if you want to get away, Sean, to do it, and it's only really Van Aert who's taken the initiative, and he's now got somebody tacked on with him.
Yes, well, at the moment we're still a little bit from the summit, and I think, as we can see, riders getting in difficulty there, and a lot of riders losing contact, of course, but it's just 11 kilometres from the summit to the finish, so quite a bit more to go, and it will be surprising to see, because nobody really pushing on the pace here at the moment. We can see Luc Wiggers very much to the front of the bunch. Will there be somebody who will try an attack? And that will only be in the final 500 metres of this climb.
It's Rigoberto Urán who's just had a little collision there. The other 2 riders, it looked to me like Francis de Grief and Moreno. The other 2 caught up with that. Big old push on. I think that's Martin Kaitzer again. Or it could be Selvaggi. Well, not really getting much of an advantage, just down the other side. It was Selvaggi. Just down the other side of the hill, and Liquigas determined to hang on to it. All the big favourites teams here have something that they need to do, a job they need to do, protecting their leaders. Selvaggi pushes on, but Liquigas have got him in their sights, as have Lampre. And a couple of riders from Astana, Kreuziger's team there. Van Aert is being swept up. What a strong team Liquigas have, they really have. And Caruso just riding up the inside of Michele Scarponi there with no problems whatsoever to rejoin the group. And they are so strong, Sean, and they've been like this all the way through the Giro so far.
Yes, very impressive as a team. They're doing a great job for the leader, and here they're just taking control on the front end of the bunch, not really going at a really fast pace, as we see an attack here from Visconti
with Sildreyes of Astana. I think it's Caruso of Katusha, and the rider from Farnese Vigna I haven't had a good look at yet. Sean, have you seen who he is?
No, I haven't got that.
It's a bit like Gatto or Rabottini, difficult to tell. Visconti missing out yesterday, must have been spitting blood, I would imagine. He really did miss out. He just came too late. Maybe he couldn't get through the gap, but he came a little bit too late. He was rocketing up the hill towards Joaquim Rodríguez, but didn't make it in the end.
No, just a little bit too late, and was he maybe a little bit in difficulty at a point, and then got it together a bit in the final, but still it was just that bit too far off. But he's putting in a big push here, and this is going to make it difficult for the sprinters to get through. With Liquigas making the pace in the front, it was a little bit easier there, but with this attack of Visconti, well, it's going to really stretch the buns out, and will it put some of the sprinters in difficulty?
Visconti, Vicioso also in the group. Di Negri, I think, is the Farnese Vigna rider. And Caruso has now joined them to police it. If this one's going to go, they need somebody to go with it, Liquigas, and that's a good man to have go. Caruso, been very good so far. It's putting a few riders under pressure, but still within touching distance. Little gaps appearing though, Sean.
Yes.
Not big enough to cause too many problems, though.
No, well, there's a lot of riders losing contact, but I think in the bunch here it's pretty much all in one line. There's not a split in the group for what I've seen there, so that looks good for going into the final 10 kilometres. And the sprinters, if they're all in there, well, you know, it's looking good at the moment, because that group of Visconti, they don't have an advantage, I don't think, to go to the finish.
No, I would agree with you. It's only 10.5 kilometres remaining, and there's a very big group behind. And even those who've been distanced by about 10-15 metres, they can come back to this one. There's no doubt about that. Vizioso leads them down the hill with Visconti, De Negri, Caruso. Interesting thing, Sean, who is the Astana rider tried to come across here? We'll see in just a second. Or maybe we won't, as the case may be. It's the last last kilometre and a bit that is going to be the real problem now, the real test now. Looking for the sprinters, can't see the red jersey of Matt Goss yet. And certainly can't see the rainbow bands of Mark Cavendish. Now, will they have lost it completely coming up to the hill? Certainly Sky were in a good position, as were Green Edge. They had a couple of men. Visconti eases off the gas. There's a little bit of a danger ahead. Very sharp right-hander. And that gives a couple of riders a chance to come across. Visconti soon twist the throttle and away he goes again. 4 riders, not with a big enough advantage to get away, but a little bit of work has to be done. It's a Kreuziger. Certainly. Didn't look like him from overhead. Romain Kreuziger, and Scarponi is chasing him. Kreuziger and Scarponi are the 2 riders chasing this little group of 4. This is an interesting move, Sean, because looking over the shoulder to see where Basso is, and they're going to have to chase just a few seconds. But if they get into this group and start pulling hard, Caruso's not going to do anything.
Not looking like they're going to be get organised immediately. We can see they're looking about here, and surprising it was Kreuziger who went across there. But again, we can see on the front of the bunch, it looks like there's some of the liquid gas riders on the front, and of course we know with Basso he doesn't like taking big risk on the descent, and but with teammates about him, it looks like that all is under control once again.
Kreuziger and Scarponi trying their hardest to get away, but I mean, it was a difficult one to make work, that breakaway, wasn't it? Because Visconti knows he hasn't got it was Gatto after all. He knows he hasn't got the advantage. He's not going to be able to get away. There is Mark Cavendish with Team Sky around him, the black with the blue band right down the middle. Visconti, they're talking about Ventoso and possibly the sprint for today, so he didn't particularly want to do something here. They go again, Movistar in the green helmet and the blue here, trying to push on, get away across to that group. Ian Stannard, I think it is, just ahead of Rigoberto Urán and Geraint Thomas, and then Mark Cavendish in the World Championship jersey. Yep, difficult group to try and get away, Kreuziger and Scarponi, because there's 2 riders in there at least who won't do anything at all. Caruso won't do anything because he's got Basso behind him, and neither would Vizioso because he's the leader's team of Katusha. Urán hits the front, starts to do some pulling work. Still haven't seen the red haven't seen the red jersey of Matthew Goss here, Sean. We'll have a look in this group now, but appears not to be right up at the front with Mark Cavendish and Team Sky. No, not at the moment. Do not see him there appearing. We can see Sky with Cavendish. You can see Renshaw's very close to in the wheel of Mark Cavendish there, but for the moment it doesn't look like Matthew Goss is in the front of this group. No, it doesn't. Urán pulls over. Fletcher from Sky takes over. On the far right-hand side in the blue, that's royal blue, Macho Tozzato is looking around him to see where JJ Hado, his sprinter, is. Sky doing a big job of trying to bring back everything under control. Renshaw in the orange and the blue shorts. So often the lead-out man for Mark Cavendish, but as yet has not been able to make that progression up to being pure winner by himself. Gosh, they're going pretty quickly though, Sean. They're all well strung out here.
Yes, it's definitely going at a real fast rate here, and you can see when you look at the rear end of the bunch how fast it's going, and it looks like the Movistar rider, that must be Ventoso there in the wheel of Renshaw. Yep,
you can just see his head, Ventoso. Arnold de Meer moving up towards the front as well, by himself, I have to say. 83 for Francis de Jeux in the white. Bang in the middle of this group. So absolutely drilling it on the front now. Team Sky, 1, 2, 3, 4. Kiki for Omega Pharma Quickstep has said that he fancies his chances today. And still no sign of the red jersey points leader, Matthew Goss and Orica Greenedge. They're notable by their absence, Sean, completely absent.
Yes, very much so. We haven't seen anybody from Greenedge, and I'm afraid that Matt Goss has not made it into this group, and we can see, Sky just keeping the pace real high as we go under the 5 kilometres to go mark.
5 kilometres to go here. It's stage 11. They're over halfway in the Giro d'Italia, and on the left-hand side of our screen, you can see Team Sky with the blue helmet and the black gear. That's Team Saxo Bank. They have JJ Hado as their sprint specialist, and Lucas Hado, the brother, seems to be on the back at the moment. Daniel Shawn from NetApp, the white with the royal blue there, coming up to join Hado on his hip, 199. Now we see our first man from Orica Greenedge, the black. You see with the green panels on the short there coming through? That's the first man we've seen from Orica Greenedge in the last 5 kilometres or so, and still the red jersey points leader Matthew Goss, teammate from Orica Greenedge, is not around here. Doing a fantastic job at the moment, Sky. They've kept it all under control. This is the back of the peloton. Well, they want to win, don't they? Saxo Bank, they've tried very hard with the Boyaro, and now they've got 1, 2, 3, 4 men here. The 2 Hado brothers will be trying to pull something out of the bag here. Bit of nerves with 3 kilometres to go. Under the 3K to go, banner. NetApp have got 3 men to the front now. Look out for Daniel Shawn, 199. On the right-hand side, see the man in the yellow shoes? They're leading Team NetApp, the white helmets. On the left-hand side, this train of Sky working very, very well, but it's going to be a dangerous little finish. This one, it weaves in and out. There's a couple of right-handers, a couple of right-angled bends, and then a nasty switchback. Not necessarily super sharp, but you saw the run in. They've had to widen the road a little bit, and it was quite tight for Manuele Boiaro to go around by himself. Mark Renshaw fighting for the wheel of Mark Cavendish there. And Francesco Kiki is the rider from Omega Pharma Quickstep on the wheel of Mark Renshaw at the moment. Alessandro Ballan here wants to give it a go and try and get away if he can. Alessandro Ballan, former winner of the World Championships from Varese. He's never going to get away at that pace, surely. He's giving it a go. Looks over his shoulder to see if he can get anything. At speed, trying to make a lone break. But with Team Sky controlling things on the front, it's going to be very, very difficult indeed. Is that Frank Schleck? It must be.
Yes.
Must be.
Trying to get back into this leading part of the peloton.
Absolutely. He's lost a lot of time. as Schlecki Nizzolo is the man from Radio Shack in this group. And now up to the front, Ventoso is brought by Giovanni Visconti with 1 kilometre to go. Watch out for these bends. Here comes the right-hander. Round they go in one long line, 1 kilometre to go under the red kite. And the marshals hurrying along. The motorcyclist just not going fast enough. They're into the last kilometre. Visconti looks over his shoulder. Ventoso is just off the pace now. Into the last bend. Sky still have men there. Well, second to last bend. But where is Mark Cavendish? He's sat in the middle. Peter Kenyak driving it along. I think the man from Orica Green Edgel, I wouldn't put money on his Daryl Impey in this second spot here. Cavendish 1, 2, 3, 4 back at the moment. Here's the final right-hander. Whoa! Somebody goes down. Is that Modelo? Oh, a whole load of them go down. Big stack on the corner. Driving for the line at the moment. I think it's Vaitkus, is it? And Mark Cavendish seems to be outgunned on this one. He's got a long way to make up. The rider from Androni is either Felino or Roberto Ferrari. It's Ferrari. Roberto Ferrari, I think, is the winner here in Monte Cantini. And once again, a final corner causes loads of problems, Sean. One rider slides out and the rest of them go tumbling down.
Yes, again, you know, a rider sliding off and causing major difficulty and really upsetting, you know, the line of riders and breaking up the front of the bunch.
Totally broken up. People coming in dribs and drabs all over the place. Alessandro Ballan there tried to get away at speed, but that was never going to happen. I don't know what he was thinking, frankly. He could have a go, but not to happen for him. Francesco Kiki didn't get any chance at all, but the question is how much has people like Frank Schleck lost here today? Fighting to get back on. Androni get a second win. There he is. What about the sprint here? I remember the day for on top. Yeah. It's the best day of my life. An Italian rider who can't be the best, can't do anything else. Yeah, I really cared about this win after I'd made such a big crash in Denmark. Yeah, after that you beat the World Cavendish. Yeah, it's great. I'm not sure if it's a pleasure for him, but you know. But today it's a big thing for me. It's a big day for me. Roberto Ferrari then stays upright, Sean. Gets the corner line absolutely right and takes the win ahead of Francesco Kiki, Thomas Vaitkus, Mark Cavendish, Manuel Balletti, Giacomo Nizzolo. Daniel Shawn runs up there again, but Roberto Ferrari gets the right line through the corner, and that's what it was all about. Here, let's have a look back at it. Into the last corner they went. Vaitkus gets underneath. Oh! Well, Mark Cavendish, I think the speed had to be knocked off just a little bit. Ferrari gets a perfect line through, and Vaitkus has got a good sprint on him, but not as quick as these guys. And I've got to say, Ferrari was accelerating away from Mark Cavendish at this point.
Yes, certainly was. It looks like Cavendish was not on a good day, because Ferrari, he could see him 3-4 bike lengths ahead, and normally Mark Cavendish, when he's on a good day, he seemed to have lost a lot of his speed there. A bit of very high gear. He had to make a change up and was never looked like he was going to challenge Ferrari, but didn't look like that Mark Cavendish was on one of his best days.
No. Francesco Kiki coming round Thomas Vaitkus to take a placing, goes around the outside of Mark Cavendish here, although Cavendish is knocked off by this point. Manuel Balletti gets in the top 10. Balletti for AG2R. Here we are then with live pictures on the Giro d'Italia, stage 12, 71.5 kilometres to go, 2:46 is a gap over the breakaway. It took a long way for the breakaway to establish, not too surprising, because the first quarter of today's stage was virtually pan flat before they started getting to the first categorized climbs. And these are the men in the breakaway. Joaquim Rodríguez from the Androni team. Rodríguez at 7:08. Ivan Sandramita, 4 minutes and 16, riding for BMC. Then Bakelans at 9:26. The other men within 4 minutes, or the other man within 4 minutes, is Sandy Cassar of Francesco Big Mat. He's at 4:01. Mazzanti of Varnesi Vini. Euskaltel's Ahmet Cheruka. It's the first time we've seen him, so good on him to get out there. Andre Amador once again in a break. Lars back. Mikael Golash, who will be trying to pick up points in the mountains classification because he's not far off Rubiano's jersey. Jan Bakelans of Radio Shack Nissan, and Martijn Keitzer once again of Vacansoleil, clearly after trying to get the Fuga prize, the escape prize, because he's in another one today. This is the peloton. 70 kilometers to go and 2:59 is the gap. It's a beautiful course today, but not easy in the slightest. Lots of twists and turns and very steep up and downs, and it's going to be spectacular towards the end, because with 3 minutes and 5 seconds, if you'd had a breakaway that went away 10, 12 minutes, then they have a good chance of staying away. Even a little bit less than that, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, they might have a chance of staying away, but not today. Once again, too many nerves amongst the big favourites. Here we are then with our breakaway men. That is Mikael Golash at the front. You are watching the breakaway of 10 men here on stage 12 in the Giro d'Italia. Bakelans of Radio Shack Nissan, Keitzer of Vacansoleil, Golash of our Omega Pharma Lotto, Omega Pharma Quickstep, sorry, Amador of Movistar, back of Lotto Belasol, Sandy Cassar of FDJ Big Mat, Luca Mazzanti of Varnesi Vini, Ahmet Cheruka, there in the orange of Euskaltel, Jackson Rodriguez from Androni, and Ivan Sandramita in the black and red of BMC. Marja Bruggen, seen too much of him. Had a few years where he was well up there in the Giro d'Italia. The man leading the peloton in the red there is Mikhail Ignatiev with Pavel Brut, the Russian road champion, just behind him in the white. Oh, fall in the group. Oh dear. And like Hampsten for a minute. I think it is Adam Hampsten. Yep, Adam Hampsten, who's come down there and looks to be winded quite a bit. And just one of those lapses of attention amongst somebody in the peloton, I think, and it's brought Adam Hampsten down. And Hampsten pretty much winded and probably landed on his bars or something similar. Clutching his chest, but other than that, seems to be okay. Sternum he's pointing to. Well, in the commentary box beside me as we watch Adam Hampsten receiving the medical attention, with his sternum clearly giving him some jip. Sean Kelly. Today, Sean, a very difficult day. Up, down, up, down, up, down, and a very tricky and technical run back into the finish today.
Well, it's the most testing day in the final. We have a lot of climbs here in the last 80k, and there's some longer ones than we've been having in this race. When you see yesterday the damage it caused, and of course we heard Schleck there talking about his problems, but he was the big favourite who lost a lot of time yesterday. Today is going to be another spectacular final, because this one is another difficult one. And the way they've been racing once again today, in the beginning they were racing really fast, in the earlier part of the race. In the flat section, which was almost 50 kilometres, they just went along at a very, very fast rate, and all that will pay in the end of this stage today and later on this race.
Yes, they really went flat out first thing this morning. The whole peloton was in one big long line, and surely, Sean, when the breakaway that you're allowing to go actually goes in the end or manages to get away, because it's a bit of both, isn't it? People are trying to get away, and the peloton are keeping a watchful eye on who is trying to get away. When it actually finally happens and there's some sort of agreement between the riders in the breakaway and the riders in the peloton as to let that one go for a bit, or it can't stay there anymore. You must sit back in the peloton and thank your lucky stars it stopped chasing along.
Well, first of all, it's always difficult for the race leader and his team to take control in the earlier part of the stage, not to allow a breakaway get away with somebody dangerous, or maybe a couple of riders who are dangerous, because if you allow a group of 10 or 14 riders away and there's somebody a danger man in the general classification, you're going to have a big chase to take that back. And I think that was the problem today. There were groups definitely going away, but I reckon the ones who were getting away weren't the right ones, and they had to close them down very quickly with the Katusha team.
Yeah, I think Luca Mazzanti has been dropped out of the break now, so we're back down to 9, I think. Welcome back. Always good to get a few souvenir shots out the window. Three minutes and 34 seconds as they go towards the Ligurian coastline. 68.2 kilometres, but we've got a lot of climbing in between. The third category climb of Valico, followed by the feed zone at La Barraca, and then Valico La Mola is the second category climb, coming after 120 kilometres. The final climb of the day at Villa Tassani, they've extended the feed zone to Villa Tassani, so, well, the feed zone is where you can get bottles anyway, rather than keeping it inside the 20k to go mark, the 25k to go mark, just because it's a useful place to be able to take bottles before it gets a bit too hectic on the descent down into the finish today. It's Sestri Levanti. Well, cast your mind back to 2009 and Denis Menchov in that mountain time trial there. He won the day there ahead of Levi Leipheimer, if I remember. Levi Leipheimer was second. Also up there, Bradley Wiggins was in the top 10, I seem to remember here. At Sestri Levanti. Jose Serpa did quite well, but it was the sort of terrain that you couldn't possibly use a time trial bike on. It was a road bike one, and Sean, you were remembering better than I was actually that Denis Menchov romped up one side and was doing really, really well, and then we were wondering whether he would take the pink jersey because it was his descending that was the problem, which he's not the most brilliant descender in the world, but it does go to show how technical the descent into the finish is today.
Yes, he was really strong at that time trial, and it was a difficult one. Real time trial for a good time trial, so really strong time trials. And Menchov was putting in a real good time, and the final kilometres down to the finish that day, he had a big advantage, but he lost quite a bit of it. Still held on very well, and as we know, Menchov, he doesn't really take the risks on the descent. And you know, that day it was very, very technical, and lost quite a lot of time from the final climb to the finish. And as we've seen in the past, Menchov, he doesn't like those descents at all, and even in a group or on his own, he doesn't seem to be able to handle it.
No, that's the last time we were here anyway. At the finish in Sestri Levanti. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to be, a beautiful day as well for riding. 3 minutes and 37 seconds. It took a long time for this breakaway to get away. It's not a particularly long stage today, but it's a right old thumping one. Up and down, and just one of those ones that David Duffield used to beautifully call conky. Slightly more than conky, this one. Now, Sean, what are the dynamics of letting a breakaway go? Because we know that for the first 50 kilometres or so, they were absolutely flat out. They were hammer and tongs at it. And the first man to really try and break away after 35, nearly 40 kilometres was Matteo Carrara of Vacansoleil. He was reeled back in, and then one after another, some people try and then they don't get away and they come back. What is it? What is the dynamic that allows a breakaway to go?
Well, first of all, it's just mad at the start of a stage, because when you get into that mood where riders start attacking and the group is not left away very quickly. We did see on one or two occasions, we see the early part of the stage, the riders got away pretty early without having to do too much of attacking in the first number of kilometres. But other days, you know, there's the wrong men going into the breakaway, and it just continues on for 30, 40, 50 kilometres, and that is very hard, because you have the team who want to control the race of the race leader. You have to take attention that who gets into the break. You do not have a problem later closing it down, and I think that was the problem today. There seemed to be a lot of attacks, a lot of riders trying to get away, but it seems to be the case where there was riders getting into the breakaway, which Katusha were not allowing. And as we can see, Katusha here are controlling. They have no man in the break, and that is the tactic of the team with the race leader. You just keep every one back with your race leader and to control the race. But they have done the job quite well, although when you look at the classification, the riders we have up there, 4:16 to Santa Maria to Cassar 4:01. There are men which you cannot allow to take that 15-minute advantage, because to close them down the end, you have to ride so fast. And we can see here they're just keeping the, as they say in cycling terms, the lead on it at the moment at 3:41. Still 66 kilometres to go, because the riders are up there. They're a little bit in the danger zone all the time.
This is Emanuele Boiaro, who tried yesterday to stay away. There's a few slowings down, going around a bit of collapsed road at the side there. Mark Cavendish, you can see towards the back, the red jersey there at the back on the right hand side is the best placed man in the points classification, and it is Mark Cavendish. Well, we caught up, Philippe Sellier caught up with Romain Kreuziger this morning.
Siamo giù in Italia, che è il mio obiettivo primo di stagione.
My objective is to stay pretty focused, but not just on the mountains, but everywhere. Every day there's, it's not too difficult. There's lots of surprises, so I've got to keep my full
be the same
attention.
problem for you, not to lose time on maybe a favorite who can go in and escape.
Ma io penso che oggi è tipica tappa da
today it's
fuga da lontano.
Typical day for an escape. It'll might start very early. It'll be a massive fight to get into the escape. Maybe 4, 8 who could go for a stage victory. But we never know quite what will happen. Well, pretty much as he said, Sean, massive fight to get away. We've got 9 riders as it is actually, who've got away, and they're just being kept under control as the peloton just snakes its way through these hills. Kreuziger just spelling out what I think what all the favourites know. They've got to be attentive every day. Each Giro is different. Last year's Giro was extremely difficult, very tough, pushed the boundaries of what was not to some people acceptable, but this year totally different type of race, but you've always got to be attentive. 3 minutes and 45. And 66 kilometres to go. Sandy Cassar, once the great white hope of France, but now good for the breaks and the shorter stage races. Welcome back. You're looking at aerial shots of Mark Cavendish being picked up by Ian Stannard and Bernard Eisel there, forming their own little bus. As at 65 kilometres out, he starts to get into trouble with the climbing, and he will now be paced home. Oh, that's nice. Remembering Vuelta Wayland. Don't use 108 in the Giro d'Italia anymore, of course, because that was his number last year. He's not the only sprinter who's beginning to have trouble, Sean, is he? We saw Francesco Kiki also slipping off the back of the peloton, and that bus will just get bigger and bigger, I think, now.
Well, that's what they will be hoping. The Sky Riders, we could see a number of them there with Mark Cavendish, and this climb, of course, it's almost a 10k climb, Valico Guarciarola, which is quite a difficult one, and we can see the sprinters are starting to get into difficulty, and there's a lot of this climb still to go there and quite a number of kilometres on the top. So as you say, this bus is going to get bigger. Numbers, I think, will grow, and they need that. They need to get a big group here to keep on riding, to have a lot of riders to keep the pace going in the flat sections between the mountains to come. And still with 64k to go, it's a long ways to the finish, and time delay is not going to be easy today.
Absolutely. Oscar Gatto. Guarini was in trouble a bit earlier as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the bus at some point. And this is back up with our breakaway men at 3:45. Sandy Cassar now within 14 seconds of that pink jersey of Joaquim Rodríguez. Sandy Cassar, Sean, we mention him every year. He's become very good for these breakaways. He's good for stage wins. He can always be there or thereabouts, top 10 in the smaller tours, sometimes not in the grand tours. But at one time he was thought of a bit like Chavanel as the great French hope. He's never quite come up to that. It's very difficult to live up to that tag.
Well, yes, it's difficult to live up to it, and it puts a lot of pressure on the riders when they're coming up in the ranks. And Cassar, of course, he was riding well in Paris-Nice a good number of years ago. He was battling up there for the general classification, and then they started to talk about it. He's a possible Tour of France rider, and of course France, they have been looking for a long time to get a general classification rider, and anybody comes along and shows that talent, well, they talks about it a bit. But Cassar did not make it. Even the smaller stages he never really made it, but he is a good solid rider. We have seen him in the past in the Tour of France. He always gets into breakaways, takes his stage victory, took a number of stage victories in the Tour of France, and he's a bit of an old fox now. He's out to calculate well.
Absolutely.
We haven't seen him here. He's been playing the waiting game, I think, and looking at the route book every night and saying, well, roll on the bit of more difficult stages and I will get into a breakaway. And today, of course, with these difficult climbs, the first ones, which are long 9-kilometre climbs, he says, well, if I can get into the break today and we get a good advantage. He's always dangerous, and in a stage like this, he's always up there to take a stage victory.
Lots and lots of teams in the front at the moment. Nobody really having to do that sort of controlling. It makes a change not to see liquid gas at the front, Sean, or in one big mass.
Well, I think we will see them later on the day, because the way they have been riding, they have been, really being so careful with Basso to keep him really up in the position where he doesn't get into any danger at all. For the moment, they don't need to do it, with Katusha just rolling the pace along here, and everything is under control. But as we get towards the end of the stage, we will see Basso appearing, I think, especially for that final climb with the descent, which is pretty technical, around a 5k descent, which could be definitely a danger point, and there we will see liquid gas trying to get Basso to closest to the front as possible. And we did see yesterday he was very much to the fore, but still on the descent. We see Kruisinger, we see Scarpone, they slipped away from him into a group on the descent, and took 150 metres advantage. So Basso, he's not comfortable on the descent, and he needs all the support of his liquid gas team.
Beautiful roads. I mean, absolutely gorgeous to ride around. Be nice if you weren't racing. It really is fantastic stuff here. We saw an overhead shot of Frank Schleck just now, Sean, and this Palmares popped up. A little spat between him and Alex Rasmussen yesterday. He says that Rasmussen gave his teammate Van der Velde a great big shove to get him further up towards the front. And in the process, once he'd done that, he came to a grinding halt because all his momentum was taken away. That's what Schleck says. Rasmussen says, of course, he done his bit towing riders up to the front. He was just slipping down through the pack, and Schleck crashed right in the back of him because he was panicky and wasn't near the front. Who are you inclined to believe, Sean, or is it just a bit of both, maybe?
Well, it's difficult. It's difficult to know. We didn't see the incident. We did see Rasmussen on the ground and just getting up after crashing, as we can see here for the GPM. Golash is going to take it here, and of course the rider we had there, Jackson Rodriguez, really going for it. So yeah, Schleck said that he did push his teammate give them a push forward, and then when you do that, of course, you come back very quickly, and if there's somebody close behind you, they can just crash into the rear wheel and take some riders down. That is what Schleck is saying. Rasmussen is saying something different. I don't know. Although Schleck did say, well, there's a lot of riders that see it, so maybe we'll hear a little bit more about it in the days to come.
Maybe we will. Bad form? Giving somebody a shove in the middle of the peloton?
Well, it's a thing that, yes, you...
it's a bit dodgy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is dodgy, and especially the way they were going yesterday, it was really, racing very fast in the final. If you're about to do that, you give a little bit of a glance over your shoulder and see there's nobody really close in your wheel, then you can afford to do it. But if they're very closely packed and they're real tight behind you, it's real dangerous, because you go back very, very quickly. You slow down so quick when you push the rider, your teammate, and I can see why it can cause a crash. And if that is the case, well, Schleck, I'm not surprised that he's not happy.
I'm not surprised either. The footage you saw a couple of times was Michał Golasz, the Polish rider who was second in the mountains classification, going over the top of that Veliko Pass first. All of our 9 breakaway riders are back together here on stage 12 of the Giro d'Italia, and it's Michał Ignatiev, the rider from Katusha, in the red there, just leading things along at their own pace. 4 minutes and 10 now. The gap has spun out to a little bit. I think they'll start to just bring that back very slightly. Sandy Cassar will be the leader on the road very shortly. Sandy Cassar started at 4 minutes and 1 second, so he's already in virtual pink. As the peloton goes over the top of the 3rd category climb, the Veliko Guatarola. Michał Golasz takes the points over the top of there. 5 points to him. And he's chasing that lead in the mountains classification jersey. Started off 8 seconds down, 8 points down on Jackson and Rubiano. Scored another 5 points back there. Still more points to take, Sean, today. A 2nd category climb. He'll be going for the Veliko de Mola, La Mola as first of all. That's the 2nd category climb. 9 points on offer there.
Yes, I think they will be able to hold on out there. We see on this past climb, Katusha just rolling at a good pace and keeping it at that 4 minutes roughly. It has grown out a bit, but I reckon that will be around the maximum they will allow it to grow to, and just keep the lid on things. And in that case, well, they will be able to contest for the mountain points on the next climb, which is the 2nd category. And the men who are up there, Golasz, of course, he is eating into the advantage of Rubiano from Androni, and we can see Jackson Rodríguez, he's making the sprint there also, because he doesn't want to take the maximum points.
Not a bad place to go biking in, Sean, this, is it? It's pretty nice if you weren't racing.
Well, it's perfect for biking, casual biking, let's call it. If we ask some of the riders who are in the bus what they think, is they wouldn't be given the same answer, because they're really suffering, and we can see there the sprinters all having, a lot of them having difficulty, and it's just everybody is starting to feel the effects of the very aggressive racing we've had, the warm weather, which was a number of days ago a little bit uncomfortable for racing, but it has cooled down a lot. Yesterday there was nice conditions again. Today we see 19-20 degrees, so that's not a problem, but still fatigue is a problem for a lot of riders.
Yeah. As if to illustrate, a bit of on-bike stretching being done by Green Edge.
Lancaster, I think it was.
Looked like Brett. Having a bit of a stretch. Not something I'd recommend doing at home if you're not used to it, Sean. But it's amazing how much you can relieve the tension when you're on a bike by... there's a whole series of stretches you get used to doing, and that's one of them, isn't it? Slinging the foot over the saddle.
Yes, well, the stretching now is something that the riders do a lot of, and after the stage, the evening time, the morning before you go out to the start, you would be doing it. But we see some riders who suffer maybe a bit more and do it on the bike, and they can do it with a lot of comfort. But as you said, it's not something that you should try if you're not used to racing. First of all, I think your bike handle has to be very good, because if something goes wrong, well, then you can fall very badly.
Are you an advocate of stretching for cyclists? Because there are some people who say it's not a good thing to do, and other people who say, for cyclists in particular, other people who say it's absolutely vital. Did you stretch much when you were racing? At the end of my career, I started to do it in the last 4 or 5 years. But in the earlier part, we didn't know anything about it. Nobody was advising us to do it. But in the end, I was certainly made to do it more so than wanted to do it. But it is good. I think you need to know how to do it first of all. It's very important that you know exactly what stretches you need to do, how much you need to do as well. When you come in after a very difficult stage, when you're really tired, I think there you have to have advice on that and know how much to stretch. I believe that when you're really tired, it's not a good thing to stretch heavily, because there is dangers involved. But you would need to get, from your physio, the kinesist, whoever's advising you, and all the teams. The big teams certainly have that, but with people who do not know, they should go to a sports physiologist or somebody who would do sports massage, let's say. I think they would give you that advice and give you the right direction to be sure that you're doing the right ones and you're not going to do yourself any damage. 56.5 kilometres. They've just passed through La Barraca, which is the feed zone. You can see them taking musettes at the side of the road. Probably a pretty safe place to do it, Sean, because you're not going very, very fast. You don't have to worry too much. You can get the musettes as they filter past. They know it's coming. Sometimes a bit better than on the flat, where they also try and string out to get to it in time.
Well, again, on the flat, depending on what's coming up after the feed station, if it's relatively flat and you're going in the same direction and the bunch is calm, well, then you normally roll through the feed station calm and everybody takes their musette with a bit of ease. But sometimes it's very nervous before the feed station for 30-40 kilometres before. In that case, it just continues and probably gets a bit more nervous as you come to the feed station, and they go through at a very fast rate. As we can see here, it's just going slightly uphill. It will not be going anyway majorly fast back in the bunch, so perfect for taking your musette. But you have to be careful when you have a bunch of almost 180 riders. Well, you just have to watch out and be careful that you don't bang into the rider in front of you. And you also have to watch out sometimes with the people handing up the musette, because they stand in the middle of the road, and we often see the riders, they go left and right of them.
Four minutes and 19 seconds, 55 kilometres to go. It took a long time for this breakaway to get away. We're on the Ligurian coastline. We're coming down towards the finish today at Sestri Levanti. We've already mentioned that the last winner there was Denis Menchov in 2009. Before that it was Juan Harac, who won in 2006. But the first winner stretches back to 1960. Gaston Nencini was the rider who won there. Very, very fine rider. Won an awful lot of things, and that's the sort of profile we have today. They've just gone over the Guatarola onto Barraca, which is that second little peak illustrated there, and the feed zone at that point. It's been very much a fatiguing, sapping Giro d'Italia, this one, Sean. It's been steady, steady, steady all the time. But the weather has been pretty good, pretty hot for most of the time. A little bit cooler today. And I just feel as though there's a lot of tired legs out here already, and we've got a massive week of mountains to come.
Well, it's been very aggressive racing. We have had, a lot of flat stages in the first week. But the racing has been very aggressive, because they haven't been allowing breakaways to succeed to the finish. And I suppose when you see that, they just control the breakaways all the time. There was somebody in pink leader's jersey who wanted to control it and to try and hold on to the jersey for as long as possible. And for that reason, there were breakaways getting away, very strong breakaways, riders who were riding really well up front, but still the bunch was keeping control on the situation. And when you have that, well then, it's going to be fast every day, and I think it was, that situation, aggressive racing, a lot of nervousness in the race as well, but that is normal in a big stage race. The first number of days you have it for 2 or 3 days, but then after that it settles down a bit. But here it went on for a good week, and the hot weather that we got for a number of days, I think everybody is paying because of that. Fatigue is going to be a problem, and is a problem for quite a number of riders.
Kilometres to go, and for some reason, Sean, this breakaway is being allowed to slip a little bit further out. Surely are they reckoning they can bring this one back? But it's getting a little bit too far out, I think.
Well, they were controlling very well for the first section of the race. They were keeping it under control, but we've seen now they've slowed down a lot, and the advantage is grown out very quickly. 5:25 at the moment with 50k to go. When you look at the earlier part, it was 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, and they seem to leave it grow out into the 4 minutes, but now they have left to go on to 5.5 minutes, and we can see on the front of the bunch it is slowed down. We haven't got as many Katusha riders. We did see the race leader Joaquim Rodríguez coming back to the car and having a talk there with the director sportive. So yeah, are they going to control it all the way? Are they maybe thinking, well, if we continue on doing this every day, we're going to pay in the later part of the race? I'm surprised, because I thought Rodríguez would try and control it today at least and hold the jersey for another couple of days. Because I don't think to win the race outright is going to be really difficult for him. So to stay in race lead, a pink jersey for 3-4 days would be very important for the exposure for himself and for the team. And it looks like that at the moment. There's a little bit of discussion maybe in the bunch, and maybe they're looking for some other teams to get involved and want them also to contribute something here to the controlling on the front.
We're running today from Seravezza to Sestre Levanti through what they call the Apuan Alps. It's Michelangelo country, this. And from around here, it is very, as you can see, twisting and sinuous and very green up and down. And they are running down towards the Ligurian coastline. And the beautiful finish at Sestre Levanti. Going past Cinque Terre today as well, which is you've seen it, probably seen it so many times on films, nestled right up against the coastline. 5 terraced villages, all one on top of each other, with lots of vineyards and olive groves surrounding it and so forth. But the amount of people who come to this part of the coastline is tremendous. 5:44, the gap is just sliding away a little bit at 48.6 kilometers in. Surely this must be a move that Katusha are aware of. They're just keeping it under control at this sort of pace, but it does seem to be as though that gap is getting further and further out. They surely won't let it get too much further, Sean.
Well,
so I wouldn't if I was in the DS's car.
Yes, it gets to be a bit of a big chase then if you're allowed to go a number of minutes more. But at the moment, the 5:48, I think when you look at the final, they can still pull back a lot of this time. And of course, they don't have to close it down totally, because for Katusha, they're not really going to be going for a stage victory. So they're only interested in defending the race leadership and allow this breakaway to get quite a big advantage, but still pull them back in the end enough to control the race for the race leader, Joaquim Rodríguez. So maybe that is the tactic as well. And when you do that as well, it gives some of the other riders a chance. And some teams say, well, if we close this one down again today, well, the teams are going to be unhappy with us and they're going to get really aggressive in the next days at the start. So sometimes the tactic, that way it gives something else to the other teams and allows the breakaway to have their day, have a go, and fight it out for a stage victory.
Mark Cavendish's group. Yep, the red jersey points leader. He's taken that jersey from the shoulders of Matt Goss, who I think suffering after being poleaxed by Filippo Pozzato. There's Adam Hampsten. at the back in the blue and red and white of Lotto. There was only in a tumble a little bit earlier, but seems to be at the back of this group now. Sean?
Yes, I'd say that's the back of the peloton. We can see there. Or maybe it could be the group of...
I think it's the Cavendish group.
Yes, it could be, because Cavendish's group have grown a lot. As we said, we can see there must be 40 plus riders there, so it's possible that Hampsten is in the back of that one, and it's looking good for the Cavendish group. They could get back in here because the bunch is not going at all out front, so I don't think they're that much down on the bunch of big favourites.
No. With Adam Hampsten at the back was Jeremy Hunt of Team Sky, but it's Bernard Eisel along with Mark Cavendish here. Well, Cavendish is just one of those riders. One of the questions we've had on Twitter today is, can you not get sprinters who can climb? Well, yes, you can. Best example, one of the best examples of which is sitting next to me. Sean started his career largely as a sprinter, and as he went through his career, realised that he could win more things than just sprinting, so he changed as a rider and became good at climbing as well. We're not talking in this sort of Positivo class of climbing, but good at climbing. There's other people. Merckx, of course, he could do everything, as could Sean. Time trialling as well is vitally important. But sprinters, Freddie Martins probably is the archetypal sprinter who can climb, having won the Vuelta of España in 13 stages in the same race. But how difficult is it to become a sprinter climber, Sean? Because people like Mark, he's never going to be a climber.
No, I think Mark Cavendish and the super sprinters, let's call them, they have difficulty climbing, and they're always going to have difficulty on the mountains, as we can see here today, and in the big mountain stages. Then you have the riders who can sprint well, and also climb very well. And during my career, I could sprint quite well when I was in a group of riders, that you had not got the super sprinters, but against the super sprinters, I always had difficulty, matching them. If there was a very long stage and a very difficult stage, or in the classics, for example, well then at the end of a very long, hard race, I could sprint real well also. But the super sprinters, they just have that difficulty in just getting over the climbs. When the speed is on and it really pushes on, they always get into difficulty.
Would you agree that Freddie Martins is probably the super sprinter who could climb?
Yes, well, Freddie would be one of the better ones. He was a real good sprinter. He could win stages in the Tour of France against the great sprinters. And then when you look at the races he won, Paris-Nice's, Tour of Spain's, he won a lot of great races, Tour of Catalonia, all of those races, he was capable of winning. So he was able to do both at a real good level. Sprinting, of course, was his strongest one, but he was an amazing good climber as well. Yeah.
Of course, you get the other way around as well. Guys who can time trial and climb, who can also turn in a decent sprint from a small group. Eno, prime example. Eno is 5 times a Tour de France winner of the Giro d'Italia and the Vuelta of España, and won stages on the Champs-Élysées in a sprint in the yellow jersey. So capable of everything. Right, we're going to take a short commercial break. The gap is at 5:51. They're not being allowed any further than that at the moment. "43 kilometres still to run. The gap is still slipping out a little bit. 5:58 it is now. Martin Keitzer in the breakaway had a puncture, but quickly attended to and back in the breakaway. There's Lars back. You suggested to me earlier, Sean, that Lars back was the one that you'd have possibly picked. If I'd have said to you, right, who's in the break, you would have said, well, Lars back today, I think, because you think he's been waiting.
Yes, he's another one has been making the calculation, and we see him in the earlier days in Denmark when it was riding real fast in the final 30 kilometres. He was able to attack and take 15-20 seconds off the front of the bunch, so he's in good shape, and I think he made the calculation, take a number of days, take it easy and have a go, and he probably just pinpointed the stage today. This will be a good one if a group gets away. Difficult there in the final 70, 80 kilometres, and if you get a few strong men up there, there's a possibility to go all the way to the finish. And he is the one that I think experience also, as Cassar is there. Bacalan's also, I think, maybe is another one who have been doing that calculation, and so far so good for them, because 5:58 at the moment. It's looking okay. It's looking much better than it was 30 kilometres ago.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they could go all the way to the finish and have a go for the stage victory, battle the stage victory out here.
Certainly Cassar, I'm absolutely certain, will have looked at this route for the whole of the Giro d'Italia as the race goes on, seeing what sort of shape he's in, and has targeted today and thought, right, this is a day for me. This is a typical Sandy Cassar breakaway type of day, and I tend to agree with you. Lars Bak is another one he's probably just looked at one, and Amit Chiruka as well, thinking, you know what, I'm not in as super climbing form as I should be, or I have been in the past, but I'm feeling a little bit better. This is maybe one that I could stay away in for this particular day. Francis Dujour would dearly love to get something out of this. De Marais, I think he's not going to be around for too much longer, Sean, as a young rider, and he was their real hope to perhaps challenge for a stage victory or give him some experience at tilting with the best. But they would very much like to get something out of it where De Marais goes home. What are they going to do?
Well, I think the first tactic would be to try and get something in the sprint with De Marais in the earlier stages, and it didn't happen for them. And then you have to go to the next tactic and try and get into a breakaway that will go all the way to the finish. And this is certainly an opportunity with Cassar. We know when he gets into a breakaway, he can be very strong in the end. But here today, he has some very good men up with him, and when you look at the final, you look at Jackson Rodriguez, for example. He's going to be a difficult one if they take him to that final climb of the day. We see Golash, who was very aggressive in the climbs there. He's another one who is not going to be easy to get rid of. But we know with Cassar, if he can stay in the front with 2 or 3 riders, he has a good finish out of a very small group of 4 or 5 riders. So it's an opportunity for Francis Dujour to just make this right for them and make it a good race. If they get a stage victory out of it, well then I think Director Sportif Marc Madio, General Manager, will be all happy with a stage victory.
Won't he just? Lots of people suggesting other sprinters who can climb. We forgot Laurent Jalabert, of course. Jalabert was another sprinter who turned himself into a climber, although I think he lost the edge for sprinting by that time. He couldn't do both at the same time, and Jalabert had a tremendously big crash, and that really knocked the stuffing out of me. He was never the same man again in the sprint, didn't like it as much, and reinvented himself as a rider, whereas people like Martens could continue to do both. They continue to sprint, continue to climb. They could mix the two up, but certainly, sprinters have become climbers. Jalabert. Somebody suggesting Edvald Bosenhagen. Not really, I don't think.
Well, first of all, I think Jalabert, he was on the way up as an all-rounder before he had the crash, and the crash it really scared him a bit when they had that big one in Armentières in the Tour of France, and I think it's.
It looks like somebody's had a tumble there. There's a beat on the floor. Smarkulis is the rider. Easy to do though, Sean, in a tunnel. Touch of wheels, or touching the side of the.
Well, if you don't take your shades off when you're in this, it can be
absolutely
very dangerous.
Sorry, we were talking about Jalabert on the way up as an all-rounder.
Yes, I think he was on the way up at that point, but that big smash in Armentières, it did. I think he's sprinting. He was a little bit nervous after that, and he, became more of an all-rounder certainly.
40 kilometres to go, and look at this break. They're going to let this one go, Sean. It's looking that way, but I think there's going to be a mad scramble at the end, and I'm really not quite sure why Katusha are letting it go out quite so far.
Well, we did hear in some of the, I think in the interviews, or I was reading that Rodriguez was saying he'll control it and we'll see how it goes, how difficult it will be, and he was also, he was making the hint there that we're not going to control if it's going to be a big demand on the team, because for late on the race, we want to have a team as well, and we don't want our riders tired going into the final week. So is this the answer to it? Are they waiting maybe to get other teams to contribute here? But certainly for the breakaway 6.5 minutes, it's looking real good, and they will go to the finish, I reckon, now with 39 k's to go, unless there's a big up in the peloton very, very quickly. The breakaway of 9 riders should be able to hold on out there. With how much an advantage, that is the question.
Doesn't seem as though anybody wants to take control and shut it down. Why should they? I mean, Sandy Cassar, a very fine rider, Sean, an all-round winner of the Giro d'Italia? I don't think so. Santa Amita, 4 minutes and 16 seconds down. There's going to be a fight between those two for taking the pink jersey. Barcalan's at 9:06. Jackson Rodriguez at 7:08. I think the terrain in the first week and a bit sort of flatters some of those riders. Rodriguez, for example, and Santa Amita. But I can't see any of them as a threat for week 3, so maybe they are just letting it go away, and that takes the pressure off everybody.
Yes, well, it's certainly been left away at the moment, because 6:49 is still growing out, and we can see the bunch is just rolling along. They're not up in the pace at all. They're not concerned about the breakaway. And it's going to be interesting now in this just under 40 kilometres to go, how much more will they ever go out, and that will determine the riders that are up here who are pretty close in the general classification, the ones you mentioned. If they get into the race leadership, with how many minutes first of all they will take it, and then they can hold on for quite a long time. But they would need a huge advantage to have any chance of going on and winning this Giro. But again, if they're allowed to pull out this advantage quite a lot more, well, they could take race leadership for quite a number of days. And Jackson Rodriguez, he's a one who is a very good climber. Santa Marita also very, very strong. The position he's in at the moment tells us that the shape is good, and Sandy Cassar, he can hang in there for the next number of days quite well.
Cassar's quite a good climber. I find it difficult to say who is the better of those 3 climbers actually on their day. Rodriguez is probably the best all-rounder. Santa Amita can climb pretty well, but as can Sandy Cassar when he's on his day. Tomorrow, if one of those 2 manages to get the pink jersey, well, they'll have to control the race, so it'll be a rush down to another finish for sprinters if they possibly can get over the top of the climb. 6:56, 38.6 kilometres to go. I'd be very surprised if they were reeled in now. They may up the pace in the peloton, Sean, just to keep the jersey where it is, so bring back about 1.5 minutes. Still let these guys go to the finish and contest the victory, but allow the gap to only be sort of 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes, as opposed to 6 minutes 56.
Well, I think we will see the answer very quickly. If they put the lid on it, pretty quickly and start riding, well, then they will close it down a lot. But if they allow just to grow out another 2 or 3 minutes, well, then there will be a change in the overall leadership of the race. There is still time to rectify it and hold on to the race leadership if Katusha really get together and start upping the pace.
At the moment it's Lamprey, Farnese Vini and Garmin Barracuda on the front of the peloton, setting tempo. 6:58 is the gap. They're on the second category, Valico Le Mola. Now, 9 points available at the top of this. 5 for second, 3 for third, 2 for fourth place, and you get a single point for going over fifth. So Gorlash in the breakaway, sitting at the back of the group there with Q8 on his shorts, is going to just sit in there until towards the top and then dart out and get more points, and then he should be a clear leader in the mountains classification jersey. So a lot of things could change today, Sean. Certainly 2 jerseys could swap shoulders today.
Yes, it's looking very possible that we will see changes in the jerseys, and 7 minutes almost at the moment. This breakaway is going to go all the way to the finish, and now it's going to be interesting to see what tactic they will play up front, because some riders are interested in keeping this one rolling along. Cassar, of course, he wants to keep everybody working as long as possible and go as close to the finish before they start attacking each other. There's other riders here who are not up in the general classification, like Kaiser is a long ways down, 1 minute and 28, and they are going to be thinking about the stage victory only, so they might try and attack a bit further out, because now they know the advantage is big enough to be able to do that. You can start attacking quite a long ways out, where if the peloton was closing down, well, then you have to get closer to the finish before you start attacking each other out of the breakaway.
In the breakaway also Martin Kaitzer, who wants to take another 100 kilometers or so in the breakaway prize competition. The classification Fuga Pinarello, which is the breakaway standings. He lies third overall at the moment, 458 kilometers in a break. Minguez is just ahead of him at 475, but leading at the moment is Lotto Bellasol's Olivier Kaysen with 557. Well, he's getting close, Sean, I would say, and the gap is still going up.
Yes, well, it's there's a lot of things going to change, and the gap's still going out. I think it's a guarantee now that the breakaway will succeed. But again, the big question is, will they start riding back at the bunch, or will they allow this breakaway, as we've seen in the past in tours, in the Tour of France and in a lot of the big stage races, where a race leader and his team decides not to continue controlling it, and suddenly everybody just in the peloton looks at each other, all the big riders, the big teams, nobody wants to take it up, they can't agree, and the gap grows out enormously. Will that happen here? Will it go by another 3, 4, 5 minutes?
Yeah. Yes, I think they're just playing it cool, to be honest. There's a lot of tired legs in this peloton. I'm not surprised, really. It's been hard racing, controlling things. And not just that, but they've had a long period between rest days. First rest day was on day 3, and they've got until next Monday to come. Julien Berard working his way back up to the rear of the peloton. 6:58, 7 minutes about there is the gap. 37.5 kilometers to go. Well, I suppose we've got 2 races now, Sean. What are we going to do here? Are we going to have these guys contesting against each other in the last 15, 20 kilometers or so? Trying to knock great lumps out of each other to get away, as we could run down towards the beautiful Ligurian coastline. And behind in the peloton, are they just going to wheel their way down this very tricky last descent, up the climb and then down the tricky descent? Or are they going to try and knock lumps out of each other as well, and try and put some of the riders under pressure on the sort of descent they won't like? I'm thinking of riders like Pozzovivo and Schleck, perhaps, who may not be on top form, Schleck, and it just takes it to be off a little bit of form for them to get left behind. He's already been left behind once. Yesterday he was involved in a tumble. This is Matt Goss with the medical cart, so clearly still suffering from that crash and hanging in there, but he doesn't look very comfortable, one has to say. He doesn't look as though he's having a good time at all now. Just looks slightly uncomfortable, full stop. Are they going to try and take lumps out of those people who are maybe a little bit fatigued and under pressure, Sean?
Well, you never know, and that's something, back in the peloton, you arrive and the breakaway is long gone, the stage victory is over, but still the general classification, you have to be careful. You never know on the final climb. With a difficult descent of around the 5k, very close to the finish, you just have to be very much to the fore of the peloton and be ready for an attack by some of the big favourites. But it does calm things down when you haven't got the stage victory to go for. It will cool things down in the peloton major, as we can see here in the breakaway. Now they're starting to attack there, and that's the other question: who is going to go in the attack from a long ways out? Still 36 kilometres to go. you know, like a back, for example, he's a rider. If he goes in the attack and he takes 15-20 seconds and they hesitate who's going to chase, well, then he's a very difficult one to take back, and he will want to go from a long ways out, because this final climb, he's not going to wait until that one. He knows that there are much better climbers here, and if there's a big battle on that final climb of the day, he could, you know, be in difficulty. He will be in difficulty to stay in if he's with some of the better climbers like Cassar, like Joaquim Rodríguez. So, you know, there's different tactics up front between these riders.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who goes on the attack here. Katusha has been in about 4 breakaways now. It would be lovely for him to get the Fuga Pinarello escape prize, but having said that, he'd still like a stage victory more than that. Berkeland's now just pushing the pace on a little bit. They're certainly rolling along quite nicely, our breakaway riders. Let's remind you who they are. Joaquim Rodríguez of Androni. At the back here, number 81 in the white with a clover leaf on his back, Francis Dujeur's Sandy Cassar. There in the red and black of BMC is Ivan Santoromita, the Italian rider. In the center, in the blue movie star kit, is the only Costa Rican in the race, Andre Amador. And then number 154 there, with Q8 on the back of the shorts in the Omega Pharma Quick Step kit, is Michael Golash. He's going to go for the points here at the top of this hill, there's no doubt about that. Just to his right in the white helmet and white kit of Androni is Joaquim Rodríguez. Martin Katusha, the blue and white and yellow Vacansoleil there with the red shoes on, and in the all orange Ahmet Cheruka. Very good little climber. Has not been on super form, but maybe today could be his day. Joaquim Rodríguez is leading them at the moment. The only other man we've not mentioned in the breakaway is Lars Bak, the Lotto Belisol rider. And here goes Michael Golash to try and get points. Just pushing the pace on a little bit. Everybody being forced to react. There's Lars Bak. And as immediately as you said, Sean, he's sitting in here, he can roll along, but he finds difficulty reacting to that sort of little punchy stuff that people like Santoromita and Joaquim Rodríguez can pump out.
Yes, he doesn't like the sudden accelerations on the climb at all. And we can see here he's just, you know, sitting on the rear, trying to get over this climb. If he does, I think he will try and go on the attack before the final climb of the day. That would be my tactic if I was, back, because he need to get out of this group before they get onto the final climb. If they do all stay together, there is going to be fireworks certainly on that final third category climb.
35 kilometers to go. Katusha takes the intermediate sprint ahead of Santoromita and Ahmet Cheruka. Katusha will be pleased with that. 2 kilometers to the top of the climb. Whoops, one of the Vacansoleil boys needing a new bike. And Goss swinging the bike up out underneath him on this climb. It's a long old haul, this Shawl, isn't it?
It is, and today, as we can see,
Belloni
just, I think, dropping a chain.
Yeah, Alfredo Belloni.
It is a long climb, and that's what they've got today. Like, they have these climbs of 8-9 kilometers. There's 2 of them in there. Well, about 7 kilometers, 9 kilometers, and there was a non-categorized climb as well, which was, you know, about 5k, and the one in the end also. It's another difficult one.
Belloni's having to hang around a bit. Give the mechanics some exercise.
He needs it.
Oh, that's provided the highlight of my day. Not much going on. Actually, I mean, a Giro like this, we've talked about it, is absolutely fascinating, isn't it, to see this sort of waiting, slowly developing game that we've seen. Liquigas on the front now, beginning to set some pace here. It's interesting. They'll bring that gap down now to within some controllable distance, I would imagine. But this slowly, gradually unfolding game with long days between, with long periods between rest days, it does mean that actually for us commentators, it's more difficult to commentate, Sean, because there's far less going on for a lot of the time.
Well, you always get this style of day in a 3-week tour. You have these stages where there's not a lot happening, and you just never know, because you look at a stage and you can say, well, this is not going to be an interesting day, it's not going to be an aggressive race, and for some reason the way the tactics work and the way the teams go about it, it can be a real exciting day. And then other days that you would expect a lot of big battle to start a long ways out, it just doesn't happen. And we've seen in the big tours, the big mountain stages, sometimes there's nothing happen at all, and we're talking about them for a number of days before. So that is the good thing, and that is the interesting about bike racing. You just never know. And for the riders, that is the difficult thing. You cannot make a calculation and say that is going to the way the stage is going to work out today, so I can relax in the rear of the peloton. You just cannot do it.
How much does it get to some riders, Sean? I mean, you're a particularly well-balanced chap. I know, I've been working with you for 10 years, but do some riders really, well, we've seen it, haven't we? Some riders really feel the pressure. As soon as they're in a position where they have to control things, or they have a jersey on their shoulders, they can't really deal with that constant looking around and constant being aware all the time.
Well, riders differ. Some riders are really nervous, and
Jean-François Bernard was a prime example.
They have a problem. If you're nervous, well then just riding in the group and staying in the front. If you're on your nerve all the time, bit nervous, well, that's fatigue of that will affect you as you go further into a 3-week tour. Other riders can just ride there in the group and relax so much, and sometimes too much, unless they have a teammate who is looking at the situation and just keeps it under control and stay with the leader of the team. They end up sitting too much on the rear, and they get caught out on some occasions. So it depends on what style of rider you've got in the team, and if you can relax in the earlier days, it's very important.
Sandy Cassar calling the car again. Jan Barkeland's pushing on, and Sandy not particularly happy about that. As you said, you just see me call the car. They need to keep working together. Barkeland looks over to Sandy Cassar. So I'm just rolling on, not pushing on. Cassar needs to get to the back, and apparently he's already tried to change his bike once. Golash at the front here with the turquoise on the shoulders. He's Polish rider, rides for Omega Pharma Quick Step. What's going on in the back there then? And looking to get more points in the mountains classification. They've cut this gap down quite significantly now, Sean. Liquigas taking up the cudgel here, and suddenly Ivan Basso has thought, well, I don't want to give anybody any opportunities whatsoever. Now's the time. We've had a little bit of a rest. We'll bring this back to within some sort of manageable distance so we don't give the jersey to anybody else. And that, of course, keeps the pressure upon Joaquim Rodríguez's team.
Yes, and we can see up front in the breakaway, they're not really working well together at all. They're looking at each other, and it's not because the Liquigas team are really pushing it on strong on the front of the bunch. They're making a good tempo, but not giving us anything like 100%, which they could. But we can see the breakaway here. They're just looking around. Nobody wants to ride on the front, and the time gap is dropping all the time here, because if they continue on doing that, they have to be careful. Still 35 kilometers to go for the bunch, and we can see the Liquigas are the ones who are just riding at the moment, and I think there's a little bit of a rivalry between the teams here. Surprising that Katusha hadn't put a man up there, but I think there was a lot of discussions going on earlier with Katusha. They were riding, there was nobody else wanted to ride, so Katusha at one point they said, well, okay, we're not riding anymore, we're not controlling the race, and now it's just only Liquigas who is prepared to do the riding.
But as I say, it does, if they do cut down this gap so that the jersey doesn't change hands, the gamble that Katusha have taken by saying, hey, we don't want to control it, we're not that worried if we lose the jersey, there's less pressure on us then, we'll just see what happens. It backfires upon them, because Liquigas have cut the gap down enough for the jersey to stay on the shoulders of Rodríguez, and that makes another day of decisions about what they have to do here.
Well, I think all teams will know from today that Katusha are going to control to a certain extent, but they're not going to do it all alone. They need other teams to get involved, and I think they've shown that today. If they do stay in the pink leadership jersey, well, it's another day as leader for Rodríguez without having to make too much of an effort in this final 50% of the stage.
Here goes Gollash to get the points at the top of this second category climb. Away he goes. Nobody's going to contest that one. But from the force of that attack, Sean, that looks as though he may continue over the top.
Well, he is very impressive there. You could see the way he went around the motorcycles. They were all surprised he came at such a rate, and it looks like, as you say, David, he's going to continue, and I'd not be surprised because he's a strong rider and he knows what's happening in the group here. They're not organised at all, and if he allowed the other guys to come back, it's going to be the same situation, looking at each other, who's going to do the riding. Well, here, out on your own for Gollash, if you're strong, it's an opportunity to go for it.
Yep. The great David Duffield, my predecessor in the commentary box, would be very proud and pleased to know that Michael Gollash largely got into cycling because he watched Eurosport coverage, international Eurosport, because he didn't have a Polish department at the time, and watched the Tour de France on Eurosport and was fascinated and drawn into the sport by David Duffield. That's what it was. Anders Lund's had a bit of a tumble. A few people just having a few problems here. Just to tell you exactly what's going to go on from now, Valico La Mola is where they've just gone over the top. They'll come flying down the side of this, and it goes straight into the bottom of the final climb of the day, the Villa Tassani. So really, these guys here should use getting over to Gollash as a springboard for trying to stay away a little bit. Gollash ahead of Bacalans and Ivan Santaramita. Here's the little blonde Gollash. Ooh, he's taking some chances. Four minutes and 20 seconds. The gap has been cut right down now. And it was Sylvester Schmidt doing most of the climbing work on the front, unsurprisingly. And all those competing interests in that front group, Sean, have really led them to sort of, as we were saying in the break, cruise up over the top and then rocket down the other side.
Yes, and certainly cruising on the other side of this climb. There were nobody who wanted to continue on riding, and not surprising then the gap has come down drastically, but they have really, since Gollash has went in the attack, they're really pushing it on up front, and this will help for them to hold on, because if they continued on for a number of kilometres, 15 kilometres more, made the descent very easily and nobody pushing out of the 9-man breakaway, well then the advantage wouldn't melt down drastically. Here they still have 4 minutes 28 k's. If they keep on working on it when they get down in the flatter section, then they should be able to hold on, because I don't think liquid gas maybe will really up it in the end, and but they still have to get organised and keep pushing on out of the breakaway.
We'll have to see if anybody wants to attack out of the breakaway and put people under pressure here. It's a very difficult descent, as you can see, and the last one is just as difficult. And who will put who under pressure? Rodríguez won't be put under pressure in the pink jersey, but there may be another couple in there. Frank Schleck, Pozzovivo, other guys who just don't like going downhill quite so much. 4:18 is the gap, and Michael Gollash has just went absolutely flying off the front, Sean. But for those people who are wondering why on earth did they just cruise up one side, and then now they're trying to follow this Polish guy here, Gollash. Why is there? What are the competing forces within the group? You've got three guys who are capable of taking the pink jersey, and what else?
Well, you have the other four guys in the breakaway who are a long ways down the general classification. Kaiser, for example, he's at 1:28. Lars Bak is at 38 minutes 41. So they are not going to, continue on riding unless everybody else is doing it. And you're always going to get the ones who are further down the general classification, maybe trying to just conserve a bit of energy for the final 15, 20 kilometres or the final climb of the day in today's situation. But you have Cassar, who wanted to push on there, Rodriguez, who wants to keep it going as well, Santa Marita, who is all up in the general classification. So you have two interests there, and then immediately you have a discussion like, we all have to ride, but other guys say, well, I'm not riding as much because you have more interest. You can become race leader. You do the riding, guys. And that's what we had in the breakaway, and they really slowed up on that last climb there. They just were really tearing up it.
Was it always thus, Sean, or did you have in the past the sort of characters who would boss the thing around and say, right, we are going to ride, or you are going to ride, or has it always been that way?
It's always been that way. I think when you look at the breakaway riders and then you look at the general classification, it's a difficult situation, and when you get a big advantage as well, when they got close to 7 minutes, I think there was a lot of the guys thinking who were not in the general classification. They said, well, we're going to stay away here now. I have to conserve as much energy as possible. The riders who wanted to get up in the general classification, possibly take the race leadership, they would like to keep on pushing it on. But when you get one or two that's not wanting to contribute in the front of the group, then it all starts you start getting problems immediately. Yeah,
you could have laid money on the fact that Golas should be the one who's got to go away, because he's after those mountains classification points, and he's used that as the springboard to rocket down the other side. 4:27, so he's pulled out a bit more of a gap on those Liquigas men, isn't it? He's got some advantage in the sense that he's just... well, rather than say some of the guys in the middle of the peloton, because he's by himself, he can pick a good line, but... on the other hand, if he had a super descender in front of him, they could pick the line as well. He's only got about 15 seconds of a gap, maybe a bit less now on the men chasing. And Cassar's taken up the cudgel at the front. He, as you say, Sean, is the wily old fox here. And I wouldn't put it past Cassar to be the one who jumps away at the end. Whoop, Golas. Almost on the... oh, this is right. This is a lot earlier, I think. Yep. This is at the 30-kilometre mark. Giving it everything. 4:32. He's no threat for the overall classification. Did well early on in Denmark, Sean, Mikael Golas, and hung up there for a bit. He's 24 minutes and 31 seconds down, so for him it's just the glory of the stage win.
Yes, that's what's there for him. He's and really going for it, and he knows that, and you've seen the situation. He was with the riders here when they couldn't agree, and it got totally disorganised, and now he's just went out in front and give it everything. And it's 24 kilometres. It's a long way on your own, but again, if they do not continue riding, and Cassar is doing the descent at the moment, but on the descent it's pretty easy to push it on. It doesn't take a huge effort, but when we get a bit of flatter section, you can be guaranteed that Cassar will be looking about and wanting the other riders to contribute of the pace setting on the front of that group, and that's where the problem could start again. If they do not organise immediately, well then he could pull out a nice advantage before the final climb.
Liquigas controlling the pace of the descent here. They have a jersey, two interests to protect, that of Ivan Basso's safety, and for Caruso as well, the best young rider. An average speed today of 38.67 kilometres an hour, so not a particularly quick one, but you wouldn't expect it with the sort of sawtooth profile we've had today. This man, remember, was the mountains classification winner in the Tour of Poland last year. I met him at the launch of Unibet, Jacques Hanegraaff's team. It never happened, unfortunately. Also, along with Gustave Eklasson was there. There was a lot of good riders he'd signed up for Unibet. I did the presentation in Gendt, if I can remember rightly. But anyway, it was somewhere out there. And that's where I met Golas, and he was a very wide-eyed, where I first met him. Whoops, somebody's run off. Very wide-eyed young man, and it's absolutely true what I said about him and David Duffield. He got into biking because David Duffield was such a good commentator. He just loved listening to him. That was as simple as that. He was more excited about the fact that I knew David Duffield than he was about being in the Unibet team. Extraordinary. Oh, problems for Michele Scarponi here, Sean. Looks like he may have been the man who ran off.
Yes, certainly had some problem here, and we can see the team Lamprey, 2 riders waiting, and depending on how far off he is at the moment, but again, Liquid Gas are just making the descent. They're not really pushing it on majorly, so he should not have any problem making it into the rear end of the bunch.
No, 2 or 3 other riders are stuck back here with him. Jens Kukkelaer is the final man there, and another man on the side of the road, flinging his butt. Is that Barkelens? Oh, yes, I think it is. Yes, indeed. Overcooking it, chasing Michael Golas. And Barkelens, oh dear. Clearly not Brian Bulgak. Jan Barkelens overcooking it on the corner, and sadly he's lost contact with his fellow escapees now. It's the mass ranks of Lamprey now bringing Michele Scarponi back through the cars into the back of the peloton. A little bit of a moment there. He knows he can't get cut off before this last climb of the day, Sean, because he would be in real trouble then.
Yes, well, it not be the time to get a problem, a mechanical, and not to be in the front end of the bunch. And you know, we did see, I suppose, yesterday was a perfect example of which, like, when you get a little bit delayed going into the climb, then you're open to losing quite a lot of time. And Scarponi, the time he had the mechanical problem, it wasn't a major at over 20 kilometers to go. He's back in there now, and he has a lot of time to move up to the front end of bunch.
And let's have a see how far Michael Golas is ragging away. Is that the same point that Jan Barkelens went down? Might well have been. Looks a bit like the same area. Mind you, all looks pretty much the same, doesn't it? Golas really pushing it here. Nice bit of bike control by the young Polish rider. Oh, they've knocked it off here, Sean. That's it. They're letting it go. They're not prepared to ride.
They're waiting for Scarponi.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think...
Scarponi's back in the group.
Yes, there's no...
Oh, Michael. Too much.
Where is he? He's really pushing it a little bit too much over there, and you have to, knock it off a little bit, because if you give this effort on the descent, well, then when you get down, you're going to be really on the limit. So it's all about calculating, and still just under 20 kilometers to go for our leaders on the road, our own leader and the chasers, which are only about, we have 16 seconds our last time gap, but we've seen him on the corners, like he's really on the limit on a lot of that descent.
5 minutes the gap has gone out to Liquid Gas, knocking it off, and now winding it up again as Michele Scarponi rejoins. 20 kilometers to go for Jan Barkelens. Getting in behind the car is a bit of a dodgy maneuver on some of these roads. Yeah, he's almost come a cropper a couple of times as Michael Golas. He had a 17-18 second gap over the men chasing, including Sandy Cassar and Jackson Rodriguez and a number of other riders, or 2 other riders who could challenge for the pink jersey today. Now they're back on the pace, Sean, but they've lost, 20 seconds to the lead rider, and probably... well, they haven't lost any more, to 10 seconds to anybody ahead of them, but the gap is 5:04 for Golas, but Sandy Cassar's group is going to be 18 seconds or so behind.
22 seconds.
22, yeah.
Chaser, so
would have been more if he hadn't gone off the road.
Well, yes, I think if he made the calculation and not to be taking so much risk, because he was pushing it on the limit there, and a lot of the corners he was really difficulty getting around them, and it'll be interesting now. It's all about how well they will organise the group, the rest of the breakaway with Sandy Kessa. Will they start riding? And this is going to be the section where we will see if Golas can hold on, because 18 kilometres to go. We have a section where just flat uphill a little bit, and that's where a lone breakaway out front, a lone rider, he could have difficulty if they get organised behind in holding on to his lead.
Be a fine win for him if he were to take it. Still a long way out there, anything can happen. Still one climb to come and one majorly difficult descent, so if he's pushing it as much on the next descent as he is on this one, we'll have some fireworks going off. Andre Amador from Movistar on the front, Costa Rican rider with Jackson Rodriguez just behind him of the Androni team. Last back here, and with the blue and red and white of Lotto Belisol hanging in there. He might get a bit under pressure on the next climb, though. Nice to see a deliberate move by Basso's Liquigas team, Sean, just to knock off the pace a little bit as Scarponi came racing back in.
Yes, I think that was the tactic there. They were made aware by their director sportive that Scarponi had a little difficulty, and knocked it off for a moment and allow him to get back into the front of the bunch much quicker than it would have been if they had continued as they were riding on the front before Scarponi had a little bit of a problem. And that is a nice one, because the race is not really on in the group. It's just that Liquigas are controlling it, and it could pay off later in the week for Basso if there's a situation where Basso becomes more of the general classification man. Scarponi maybe for some reason not in with a shout to get the victory. We could see Scarponi giving him a dig out, and that's something we have seen in the past. It's been nothing new.
No, something that people probably don't realise if they're new to watching bike racing is there's always this constant bartering of favour within the peloton. You need friends, don't you, Sean?
Well, yes, you need to. You don't need to make enemies. I think that's
more to the point.
That's the point. And in situations, it's not a problem for Basso, for Liquigas to just knock it off for a moment and allow Scarponi to get back in there, and it could, be very valuable later in this race.
Yeah, there's no written law to say you have to do that. Equally, there's no written law to say that you couldn't just push the pace and attack him at that point. But the race wasn't on. They weren't deliberately trying to put people under pressure. They were just controlling the pace and trying to bring back the gap on our leading group, or leading group as it was. That's what Liquigas were up against. It might have been a different situation altogether, Sean, if it was the final hill of the day and the final descent and Scarponi had run off then.
Yes, well, it would be a totally different situation then, because everybody would be just going for it. And when you get into a certain point in the final of the race, and there's no written point where it's 20 kilometres from the finish, it depends on what's been going on beforehand, how close you are to the finish. If it's on a downhill, you just keep on going. But at the point when Scarponi's had the problem here, it wasn't going at 100%, and Liquigas were just making a good pace on the front of the bunch. And we've often seen that in the case before, where some of the big favourites have a mechanical problem or has a crash. They knock it off for a moment to allow them to get back in.
Michael Golas enters the climb of Villa Tarsani. It's quite steep, but then the rundown is vicious as well into the finish in Sestri Levanti today, right down on the Ligurian coast. Absolutely beautiful. And now the attacks are coming against each other here in the breakaway, what remains of it. Jan Bakelans has got back in it. 15 to go then for the lead man, Michael Golas from Poland. A man, I suppose, who you could say Eurosport directly influenced to take up bike racing. We could, if he wins the stage, we'll claim it as a Eurosport victory. There we go. 5 minutes and 3 seconds is the gap that they have, or he has, over the peloton. And these riders are just behind him. They were the rest of the breakaway who were with him. Jackson Rodríguez from Androni. And Jan Berkelens, who has already fallen off once, trying to chase Michael Gollasch. Very aggressive rider, the young Belgian rider, riding for Radio Shack. Was well tipped to be a junior or an under-23 world champion at one time. I think it was Stuttgart. I think it was Stuttgart, where he and his team completely blew it for being an under-23 champion. But he's making a decent career for himself now, and Berkelens goes on the chase. The other men in that escape group, Ivan Santoromita, only at 4 minutes and 16 seconds down on the GC. Sandy Cassar only at 4:01. And those two men are going to slug it out for who might take the pink jersey today, as Gollasch continues on his way. 20 seconds is the gap that we have on our screen here, but I think it might be a little less with Berkelens coming out. He's doing a good ride here, though, Sean, Michael Gollasch. The big thing is he mustn't overcook it on this final descent.
Well, yes, he'll have to be careful if he's going to push as much as he was in the last descent. He could get into problems, as we can see here. 14.3 kilometres, 11.2 is the top of this climb, so he has another bit to go. And we can see back in the group they're just attacking each other, they're not riding regularly on the front, but we can see him there in the background. So we have to come to the most difficult part as well. I think the final bit of this climb is where it really kicks up. The last couple of hundred metres, it goes to 11%, and it all depends on Gollasch, how much he's got in the tank, because he's been putting in a big effort for a long time, where here in the group they're changing, the riding on the front is changing about a lot, and that means a lot in this final climb.
Berkelens has put the effort in, and now they just ease up a little bit here, though. Who's going to take the next turn on the front? Sandy Cassar realises that this is not the time to mess about. Just keep it going. A number of these riders, they're a bit nervous, Sean, because they know they've got the stage win within their sights. They've got one man up the road, and not everybody, as you said earlier, is prepared to ride. And not everybody can ride. I mean, Martin Keitzer, for example, was almost off the back there. It's given him another opportunity to get back in here, because Sandy Cassar is having to take up the pacemaking. Nobody really wanting to do it, and they're all a bit nervous.
Yes, well, a lot of nervousness here, and some of them are struggling to stay in, as you said, because on the final climb they're just in a little bit of difficulty. Cassar is doing a good job here. He's making a pace. He's just keeping Gollasch there in sight, and that will give the incentive to some of the other riders to go on the attack and try and close them down. And we did see Berkelens trying to do that. Cassar, immediately following Berkelens and not allow him to ride away. So I think Cassar, he is in good shape, but he's having to ride a lot. Will he pay for that as we get further up the climb? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. They're still all looking at each other. Look, Cassar does his bit, and then they spread across the road and all look to see who is going to take up the pacemaking. And immediately another 3, 4, 5 meters goes out. Look, as Gollasch continues on his way, and as soon as somebody stops making pace to keep him in line, he gains another 3 or 4 meters. And now Jackson Rodríguez of the Androni squad in the white takes it on. Berkelens with that black suede across his shoulders, already been on the floor. Now Cassar. Cassar says, come on, just stop messing about. I'm going for this one. He's within sight. Let's go. He's putting in a dig here. He can't shed anybody at the moment, Sean. That's the problem, except for Martin Keitzer.
Well, I think he's putting a few of them on the limit. We can see Lars Bak also having problems to stay in there, and still, 13.4 kilometres, so still almost 2 kilometres of the climb to go. And Cassar, he looks impressive at the moment, but there's a few danger once he has to be careful. Jackson Rodríguez, I'm not sure if he's finished yet today on this climb, because when he goes in the attack, if he's got the legs, well, he will try and attack before the top of this climb.
For me, the dangerous one looks like to be Santoromita to me. And Cassar goes again. with Santa Romita chasing after him, and then Andre Amador pushing a big gear. Rodríguez spins up the gear to get to him. Bacalans tries to chase back up. Cassar once again knocks off the pace. He's in the big ring though, Sean. Pushing away. 4 minutes and 46 seconds is the advantage. But that's one of the problems. He's got to push on because he has the chance of not just the chance of a stage victory, but the pink jersey. He's 4 minutes and 1 second ahead on the general classification. He's now only got about 40 seconds to play with, whereas he had over a minute.
Yes, well, he knows that. He's keeping the pace high. Also, when you do that, when somebody attack from behind, they're not going to, come suddenly if you keep the pace quite strong, and that's what Cassar is doing. But to do that, you have to be in real good shape, and it looks like Cassar is the strongest man. But can he continue on doing that? Is there somebody here waiting in the shadow and going to throw in a big attack in the final kilometre of this climb? It looks like they're all in difficulty. When you see Cassar there, when he put in that attack, it looked like that everybody was just a little bit on the limit to stay in the wheels.
And Martin Keiter coming back here as well as it levels out a little bit, so the pace is knocked off again. And Ahmed Cheruka has a dig with Lars Bak. We didn't see Lars Bak going off the front. Cheruka goes. Cassar is with him, then Santa Romita, then Amador, Rodríguez. And again it all slows up. And they come back together. This is cat and mouse on a giant scale, Sean. They're just trying to kill off people bit by bit here. Well,
it's a difficult situation. Cassar, he wants to push on, but nobody wants to contribute here, and he's the one who is doing it all at the moment, and he's the best place in general classification, so they're all looking at him to keep this thing rolling along, and at the moment they're getting through the climb pretty well, and they're putting in an attack and then it slows down. When you see Kaiser coming back, because he was on the limit there, it tells us that they are knocking off the pace a lot, and I think Cassar now, he is making the calculation. I can ride so much, but I have to keep a bit in reserve all the time because there's other riders who are going to attack in this final part of the climb.
They're all back together. Cassar still leads the pace. Santa Romita is behind him. Remember, Cassar is 4 minutes and 1 second down on 4 minutes and 1 second, should I say, down on the pink jersey of Joaquim Rodríguez. Santa Romita is at 4 minutes and 16 seconds. These are the two men going to slug it out to see if they can take over the pink jersey. And Santa Romita so far has done nothing of the pulling. It's always, or nothing of the pace setting. It's always been Cassar. And Cassar attacks again very strongly in this, and Santa Romita goes in his wheel. Amador once again strong. Jackson Rodríguez is there. And then Lars Bak, not suffering quite as much as perhaps we thought. Andre Amador now goes to take over the pacemaking, and as soon as Santa Romita tries to get on his wheel, Cassar is on his tail there, Sean.
Yes, well, he knows Santa Romita is a danger man. He has to keep him in sight because general classification, he is a danger man. And now 4:18 at the moment, it's going to be tight, but the bonifications as well could play a lot here, because if Cassar can get to the finish for a stage victory and take that, well, then he will get that 20 seconds bonification also. And as we see they come over the top here, it's going to be a spectacular downhill.
Yep, watch this downhill when we get there. It's a pretty difficult descent, and that's really strung out this breakaway now. I'm wondering just how far back Michael Golas has gone on this, as they're still climbing the Villa Tassani. Santa Romita setting a decent pace, and Cassar matching him at the moment, although I think Cassar is beginning to suffer a little bit. The Costa Rican Andre Amador pushes on. Jackson Rodríguez surprisingly in a bit of trouble here, Sean.
Yes, I thought he would be better on this final climb. Cheruka also in difficulty. They're the better climbers, and we see Lars Bak, who is a bit further up. He's climbing very well. Is that getting set? Is that back up there?
Yes, it is.
Yes, and he was in difficulty in the earlier part, but when he gets into the rhythm of the climb, he's a real strong rider. Then he can, power away up.
100 metres to go to the top of the climb. And Cassar goes classic, absolutely classic. Hit him just before the top and go straight over if you can. And he's distanced Santa Romita, who's struggling to stay there. Now, Sandy's a good descender, Sean.
Yes, he is a very good descender, and it'll be interesting to see now how we will make the descent, as we see Jackson Rodriguez losing quite a lot of time here, and he's doubtful if he'll make it on the descent. Cassar, quality descender, and he's going to have to push on. He's in the perfect position now with 3 up front. That's what they need, not too many riders to go on the attack in the final number of kilometres, and if they pull together the 3 leaders, they should be able to go all the way to the finish.
3:41 by my calculation would be the 3:42 would be the gap that's required between Sandy Cassar and Joaquim Rodríguez for Cassar to take the pink jersey of race leader. So he's got a little time. That's taking into account the bonuses. Tiralongo and Krunigo. Paolo Tiralongo now deciding this is a point where he can try and get away. He's not far down in the general classification. Sean, this is a bid for the jersey.
Well, yes, this is going to really make things nervous here, because with Tiralongo going the attack, I think Katusha also will start upping the pace, although it's Liquigas who will continue on to set the pace. And unfortunately for the leaders, it's not a good situation for Cassar, because the action back in the main bunch is going to limit their advantage at the finish if he continue. It depends on how long Tiralongo will be allowed out there if he slows down very quickly.
Cassar takes the points over the top ahead of Santa Romita and Andre Amador. But let's get back to the descent here. Now the advantage here, Sean, is with Santa Romita and Amador. They can follow the line of Cassar.
Yes, and Cassar, the experienced, a very experienced and a good descender. I think he should be, okay getting down. But again, riders get a bit nervous. He will be made aware it's going to be very tight to take over race leadership, the pink jersey. And with all of that in your mind, sometimes you can push it a little bit too much and make a mistake. But Cassar, vast experience, many years professional.
Well, as we can see now, the gap has been cut down significantly. 3:50 is the gap between the Peloton and Cassar, and that's because this man here, Paolo Tiralongo, has gone on the attack. Tom Schlachter, the Dutch rider from Rabobank, is joining these two here. Schlachter in the orange and white and blue of Rabobank. Just ahead of him in the pink and blue of Lampre is Damiano Krunigo. But Paolo Tiralongo, already winner of a stage here, stage 7 here in the Giro d'Italia, is pushing on, and Liquigas are not allowing him to get away. Interesting little dig, but they would not allow that to happen, Sean, and Rodriguez was up towards the front as well.
Yes, and interesting, the tactic there was Tiralongo, put in the attack really for Krunigo to really make this climb aggressive, and for the descent then for Basso to put him under a bit of pressure again. We did see yesterday where Krunigo was able to get away on the descent of that final climb, which was a very short one. I think this one is a bit longer, more technical, so maybe that is a tactic as well from Astana to try and put Basso under difficulty and test him on this descent.
Let's have a look. As they go over the top, it's Basso's Liquigas team who've got back to the front in a controlling position, and Amador has to upright the bike there just for a second. 8 kilometers to go. The very first shot we see is one of the riders in the escape group here having to right the bike to correct the line. And Cassar and Santa Romita doing well, and Amador struggling a little to stay on the pace.
Well, it seems like he was trying to take his speaker there and talk back to the car. He seemed to have won his left hand off the handlebars, and a little bit of panic there going to that corner.
Barkelens, another man who knows a bit about overcooking corners, but he's really They're really ragging this one out. He's taking Chiruka down with him. Yep. And they've latched onto the back of the Kassar group. There's Lars Bak. Lars Bak is a beautiful descender. Look at this. It's like watching a motorcyclist. Big knee out job. It's a good job he didn't get too close to the odd tree trunk. Take his patella out doing that. Trouble with him is his momentum. He's such a big chap. He can fling himself out of the far side of a corner and end up running wide.
And doing a great job back to hang in there on the climb. I thought he would be in much more difficulty and be a long ways off at the top of this one, but he really dug in, limit the losses, and he's back in a real good position now, because in the final kilometres he will definitely go on the attack, and if he gets that little advantage, you know, give him 20-30 metres when he gets going at full flight, difficult to take down.
Very much so. I would love to see Michael Golas get back into this group from his descending ability, but he's so far back on the others, he's never going to get down.
No, I think it's over for him. You could see.
I would love to have seen it, but it was not going to happen.
Well, I think the effort he made, he paid for that, paid dearly. When you go out there with the distance that he attacked from on your own, you know, riding at that rate, you paid dearly on the final climb. We could see, you know, he was suffering majorly when he was taken back by the group of Kassar. I think, yeah, he finished maybe 30-40 seconds on the top of the climb. .348. 6 kilometres to go for this stage 12 of the Giro d'Italia. Jackson Rodriguez out by himself here. Always almost getting back here. Rodriguez lost a bit of time as well. And clearly the... Whoa, Amador. Down goes the hammer. The hammer from Hammer. Where he goes. Around the outside of Sandy Kassar. He's a brutally aggressive rider at times, the Costa Rican. And I tell you what, Lars Bak will be the one who shoots off the front of there as well. And it looks as though that's exactly what he's done, Sean. We hadn't seen it in the shot, but it looks like Bak has come straight over the top of them, and Amador has gone with him. This is fascinating. Sandy Kassar and Sandro Romita looking at each other, working together. Now Kassar's going to come to the front of this group as well. 3:44 is the gap. It's nip and tuck. They need 3 minutes and 42 seconds is what I estimate to take over the pink jersey. 5 kilometres to go here on stage 12 of the Giro d'Italia. The breakaway took ages to establish, and then there were 10 men. That's been whittled down now to just a handful or so on this last climb up towards the top of Villa Tassani and down into the beautiful coastal town of Sestri Levante. Is going to be a cracker as the peloton goes through the 8 kilometre mark. The gap is going out just a little bit. Sandy Kassar and Ivan Santoromita both have a chance of taking over the pink jersey today. Ivan Santoromita started the day at 4 minutes and 16 seconds down. Sandy Kassar started at 4 minutes and 1 second down. And Jackson Rodriguez comes back, flying around the corner. How far down is he? Well, they've gone ahead. Bak has got the... Let's put the hammer down, Sean, and Jackson Rodriguez, for all his charging along, is not going to catch them now, I don't think. Is he after getting back, or is he behind the chase?
Has he gone ahead of them?
Yes, I think.
Surely not.
I think he's ahead.
Maybe he is.
Yes, he is. He came back and immediately goes in the attack, and we did not see that.
We didn't see it because we were watching these guys here. What an attacking last 5 kilometres, Sean. Whoa! You could see why Denis Menchov didn't like this descent on the time trial, can't you? There they are all back together. So Rodriguez had gone ahead of them just a little, and now he's back in the group. The only people missing from this group now, Martin Kaitzer, who was dropped on the final climb, and Michael Golas, who was caught on the final climb and dropped. And they will be between the two, between this group and the peloton itself. 3:53. They cannot afford to keep looking.
Certainly not at over 3.5 kilometers to finish. They're just playing this waiting game again. Who is going to continue as Kassar wants to take it up, or was he reacting to somebody to go in the attack? as we can see, the advantage, it's real close, because the peloton will finish very fast here in this final 4 or 5 kilometers.
Yeah, and Bakelans puts a little stab into the corner. Somebody's got to drive this on, and unfortunately that's what we were talking about. It's a mixed group where some people have the vested interests of the pink jersey to look for. Santoromita goes, Sandy Cassar will have to go after him, and there he goes. And then Amador back, Rodriguez, Bakelans, and Armits Chiruka at the back in the orange here. They've got to work it out between them. Santoromita in the red of BMC, Sandy Cassar in the all-white, the cloverleaf of Francis de Jure, the first and second riders here. They are tilting for a chance to wear the pink jersey here in the Giro d'Italia. The others are in it for the stage win, so they're not particularly concerned about pushing the pace along. They've got enough of a gap over the peloton to just mess around until they have to sprint it out for the line, and that's what they want. Bakelans, for example, has a decent turn of sprint on him. Lars Bak wouldn't mind that sort of thing. Amador wouldn't mind it either. But it's Santoromita and Sandy Cassar who are the guys who are going to be forced to push along here, Sean.
Yes, well, it's a difficult situation. If you're right on the front, well, then you're open to getting an attack from any of those guys in the final kilometre and a half, and you have to keep something in reserve, and that's what Cassar is doing here. He has to watch Santoromita because he cannot allow him to get away, and he also wants to keep it rolling along. The good thing is we can see in the bunch there, as we see Bakelans putting in a dig here, but Cassar are reacting immediately, and he's doing that with many riders who try to go in the attack. I think the good point for Cassar and Santoromita is that back in the bunch they're slowed down a lot, and
yes,
they're not really pushing, and we could see the last shots we had at the front of the bunch, it was rolling along at a casual enough pace, which is major surprising, because after the climb and this descent we've just had, they normally would push on very fast in the peloton, but they've knocked it off totally here.
Yeah, you could see that they were just literally rolling the pedals around here, playing a big cat and mouse game, and the gap was still going out. So back in the peloton, which we've not seen, they've knocked it right off for some reason. They're not even worried about it. Lars Bak through the middle with the dark shorts. The big Dane who tried twice in his home country to get away close to the line in the last 20 kilometers is going for the stage win today. Amador chases him, and Chiruka, little Armits Chiruka for the orange-clad Euskaltel team, takes it up. Sandy Cassar is happy to wait now, but the gap is beginning to come down. He had a decent half chance with Jan Bakelans just now. Bakelans went, Sandy Cassar went with him, and they were rolling on, but Santoromita still looking strong. He cut that gap down, was forced to do so. Nobody else was going to do it. This is a good move by Lars Bak here. Another tight bend, Sean, and he's going around like a threepenny bit trying to get round it, even though he's pretty good. Yes. Under the kilometre to go banner for the Dane, Lars Bak.
Giving it everything here, and he has to, because he has got the advantage now. He has, 30-40 metres certainly. He's looking around a lot, and
no, he's got it.
He's got it. It looks like that there's nobody close at the moment.
No. Lars Bak did a fantastic job to stay with them on the climb, and caught them again, or just not to get lost too much on the climb, and caught them again on the descent. Now has taken his opportunity with about 1.5 kilometres to go. He slipped through a gap in the middle while Sandy Cassar, Andre Amador, Santoromita and so on were looking at each other. And away he's gone. He's very, very good time trialist, and he's good at this sort of thing. We've seen it many, many times. He's got the victory in the bag. Lars Bak, the big Dane, tried to get away in the last dying lap of the World Championship to do exactly this. He's become a little bit of a specialist at doing this. Bak is going to take the victory here on stage 12 in the Giro d'Italia, and then the clock will start, because we want to see what the gap is between the Sandy Cassar Santoromita group, and it's Cassar leading it home. He wants the extra points, he wants the extra seconds, should I say. He's going to sprint hard to get away from them. He has 12 seconds. He gets that. Santoromita misses out on the bonus point, the bonus seconds there. And the clock is ticking, Sean.
Yes, it is clicking, and we can see at the moment it's upped a little bit in the pace in the front end of the bunch. Will it be enough for Cassar to take over the race leadership? It depends on how much they can push on the end, but it looks good at the moment.
3 minutes and 40 seconds with 20 would be. It's about 3:50, 3:48. I make the gap that they will need in order for Sandy Cassar to take over the pink jersey. Thomas de Gendt pushing on.
Today, so I'm unbelievable happy, and it was not the easiest day, so I'm not going back.
Well, de Gendt, strange place for de Gendt to push on. But there he is. He's clearly been strong all the way through the Giro d'Italia, trying to make up some time.
Oh, I mean, normally this year should not have done the Giro d'Italia, but
well, that's what he's doing. He's trying to make up the time to push towards the pink jersey, but he's not going to do it.
I was thinking to try to go and win the stage, but to do it, it's really, really difficult.
I apologise if you're not getting Lars back interview.
Like today, and happily the break goes to the finish.
We're not hearing anything at all at the moment. I'm afraid that our feed has gone very, very crackly indeed, and we can't hear a thing. So unsure whether he was speaking in English or not. 2 minutes and 8 seconds is the gap. Aha, seems to have recovered. Into the final corners come the Peloton, Sean. I'm not sure it's going to be enough for... Oh, it isn't going to be enough for Sandy Cassar to take over the pink jersey today. And he missed out on the stage win as well. It's the price you pay.
Yes, it looks like that the Peloton has, really finished strongly, and it's just been amazing today. They've upped the pace at times, and they've knocked it off totally, taking it up again. And here, as we come into the final kilometres, they seem to have really speeded up a lot again.
Racing towards the line now then is the Peloton, or should we say coming towards the line now is the Peloton. Sergei Lagutin with the green flash on his back there. The Kazakh. And as they push towards the line, Netap giving it everything they can. I think it's Gianbattista, but I'm not sure. Well, it might be. It's quite close. It's a little bit further out than I suspected as Juan Antonio Fletcher drags them home. Where is the pink jersey of Joaquim Rodríguez? He's not there yet. Just comes over the line now. 3:37. I fear it won't be quite enough for Sandy Cassar, but it's close, Sean.
Yes, it is close, but it looks like that Cassar just might scrape it there for race leadership, because we could see 3:34, 3:35, I think, for the Peloton. So with the bonifications, it's going to be very tight.
I estimated that they needed 3:48 actually to get into the pink jersey. So I think actually Rodriguez may keep it by just under 10 seconds. I may be wrong though. Great move by Lars Bak. Just had a brilliant race today, Sean. Managed to force the break a lot open, make it happen early on in the day. Stuck in there on the more difficult climbs, just hammered away at it, got back and closed the gap that he'd lost on the descent. And on that final descent, lovely big sweeping descent, he was really pushing it. I mean, it doesn't look like he is pushing it because he's a smooth descender, but he was taking a lot of risks and got back to them, and it's paid off.
Yes, well, the moment he got back into that group in the final kilometres, it was pretty much a guarantee that he would put in a big attack. And the way they were riding, they were just attack after attack, looking at each other, slowing up. And if Bak is allowed to get 10, 20 metres on advantage, he can ride so strong. We did see Charuka try to close it down at one time, and he made a big effort, but wasn't able to close it immediately, and then knocked off the pace, and from that point just back pulled out the advantage.
Great victory for Lars Bak. Bonus of 20 seconds to him. That won't be a problem. It's this sprint that's the important one for that. And Cassar driving for the line. 12 seconds in the bonus for him. Just ahead of Andre Amador, who gets the 8. That's not too much of a problem either. We wait for confirmation of the overall classification, and this is the run to the line for everybody else. Fletcher going on the far right hand side, Visconti through the middle, Fletcher taking the best of the rest sprint. Lars Bak wins, 11 seconds ahead of Cassar, Andre Amador, Bakel and Santoro Mito, who missed out on the bonus seconds after looking very strong, Sean. I think shame for Santoro Mito, he just lost the legs at the end.
Well, I think he was, calculating or was he suffering in the end, because we did see he was following Cassar a lot, and on the climb it was Cassar who was the one who really pushed on. Santa Marita did not look as strong as Cassar, but was he holding off a bit? That is the question. Again, in the sprint, it's a difficult calculation. Maybe in the sprint he's not as fast as some of the other ones there, and Cassar, of course, he's a real good finisher in a small group, so I'm not surprised that he was able to take the sprint for the second place. But as he definitely loses out there because getting no bonification. But again, against the Cassar, to have anything great for the general classification, to take the pink jersey, he would have beat Cassar in the sprint, and that was always going to be difficult.
Joaquim Rodríguez actually keeps the jersey by 26 seconds, so it's further out than we suspected. 17 to Ryder Hesjedal, 26 to Sandy Cassar, Tirolongo at 32. He was interesting today. Santoro Mita goes to 49. Great win for Lars Bak, though. That's his first road win since 2009 in the Eneco Tour. He's won 2 more stages since then, but ironically, they've both been team time trials. The last one was here at the Giro d'Italia last year.